You spend hours in bed trying to force your body to sleep, but the more you try, the more awake you become. Buddhist monks have known for 2,500 years that insomnia isn't a sleep problem, it's a resistance problem. When you stop fighting your restless mind and learn these 14 ancient lessons about acceptance and natural flow, your body finally remembers how to sleep deeply. The third lesson will completely change how you face your sleepless nights, transforming anxiety into profound peace. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like and comment which part of the world you're watching from. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin. The Wisdom of Night, Buddhism's Sacred Sleep Teachings. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the world holds its breath between night and day, Buddhist monasteries around the globe begin their ancient practice of awakening. But what if I told you that the deepest teachings of Buddhism aren't just about how to wake up, but about how to sleep? What if the path to ending your restless nights and finding true peace lies not in another meditation app or sleeping pill, but in 14 profound lessons that have been whispered in monastery halls for over 2,000 years? Tonight, we embark on a journey that will transform your relationship with sleep forever. You see, most people think insomnia is simply about not being able to fall asleep. They toss and turn, check their phones, count sheep, and grow more frustrated with each passing minute. But Buddhism reveals a deeper truth that changes everything. Your sleeplessness isn't a problem to be fixed. It's a messenger trying to tell you something profound about how you're living your waking hours. The Buddha himself spent 6 years in the forest, often sleeping under the stars, discovering truths about rest that go far beyond simply closing your eyes. He learned that true rest doesn't begin when your head hits the pillow. It begins with how you move through your day, how you hold your thoughts, how you relate to your own restless mind. These insights became part of Buddhism's most guarded secrets about sleep, teachings that were passed down only to the most dedicated practitioners. Picture this scene that unfolds every night across the world. It's 11 o'clock and you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Your mind races through tomorrow's meetings, yesterday's mistakes, and 100 small worries that seem to grow larger in the darkness. You check your phone, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Your frustration builds with each glance at the clock, and you find yourself caught in that familiar cycle where the very effort to sleep pushes sleep further away. Now imagine instead that you possessed 14 ancient keys, each one capable of unlocking a different door to profound rest. Imagine having tools so powerful that your mind naturally quiets, your body releases its tension, and sleep comes not as something you chase but as something that embraces you like an old friend returning home. This isn't fantasy. This is the promise of Buddhist sleep wisdom, tested and refined over 25 centuries of practice. The first thing you must understand is that Buddhism views sleep very differently than our modern culture does. We see sleep as downtime, as the absence of consciousness, as something that happens to us rather than something we can actively cultivate. But Buddhist teachings reveal sleep as one of the most sacred opportunities for spiritual growth. The transition from waking to sleeping is seen as a daily death and rebirth, a chance to practice letting go of the ego mind and merging with deeper states of consciousness. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's an entire practice called dream yoga, where advanced practitioners maintain awareness even while asleep, using their dreams as opportunities for spiritual development. But you don't need to be an advanced practitioner to benefit from these teachings. The 14 lessons I'm about to share with you are accessible to anyone, regardless of your spiritual background or meditation experience. Consider the monastery of Tashilhunpo in Tibet, where monks have practiced these sleep teachings for over 500 years. Each evening, as the sun sets behind the mountain peaks, the monks don't simply collapse into bed exhausted from their day. Instead, they engage in a careful ritual of transition, using specific breathing techniques, mental practices, and physical preparations that guarantee not just sleep, but the most restorative sleep possible. They understand something we've forgotten in our modern world. Sleep is not just recovery time, it's renewal time, and the quality of your sleep determines the quality of your awakening. The tragedy of modern insomnia is that we're trying to solve a spiritual problem with purely physical solutions. We adjust our room temperature, buy expensive mattresses, take melatonin supplements, and wonder why sleep still eludes us. But Buddhism teaches that insomnia is often a symptom of what they call monkey mind, the restless, chattering consciousness that swings from thought to thought like a monkey swinging from branch to branch. Until you learn to calm the monkey mind, no amount of external adjustments will give you lasting peace. This is why the Buddhist approach to sleep begins not when you lie down, but from the moment you wake up. The first lesson, which we'll explore deeply, is about understanding that your sleep tonight is being determined by how mindfully you live today. Every moment of stress you hold on to, every worry you feed, every time you react with anger or anxiety instead of responding with wisdom, you're programming your nervous system for restlessness rather than rest. In ancient India, the Buddha taught his followers that there are 4 postures of mindfulness: sitting, walking, standing, and lying down. Most meditation traditions focus on sitting and walking, but the lying down posture was considered equally important because it's the gateway to the unconscious mind. When you lie down mindfully with proper preparation and intention, you're not just going to sleep, you're entering a sacred state where healing happens on the deepest levels. The second lesson reveals why most sleep advice fails. We're told to avoid screens before bed, keep our rooms cool and dark, and maintain regular sleep schedules. These are helpful, but they're treating the symptoms rather than the root cause. Buddhism teaches that insomnia often stems from what they call the 3 poisons of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed appears as the grasping mind that can't let go of the day's experiences. Hatred manifests as resentment, anger, or self-judgment that keeps replaying in your mind. Delusion shows up as the confused thinking that convinces you that more worrying will somehow solve your problems. When you understand these 3 poisons and learn the specific practices to neutralize them, sleep becomes effortless. It's like removing the thorns from your mind so that consciousness can settle naturally into rest. This isn't about suppressing thoughts or forcing yourself to relax. It's about creating the internal conditions where peace arises by itself. The third lesson introduces you to the concept of sleep merit in Buddhist practice. Just as Buddhists believe that good deeds create positive karma, they also teach that how you approach sleep can generate merit that benefits not just your own well-being but the well-being of all beings. When you sleep with proper intention and preparation, you're not being selfish or lazy, you're actually contributing to the healing of the world. This understanding transforms sleep from a necessary evil into a spiritual practice. Consider the story of Ananda, the Buddha's personal attendant who struggled with insomnia despite spending every day in the presence of an enlightened master. The Buddha taught him that wisdom gained during the day must be integrated through proper rest at night. Ananda learned that his sleeplessness wasn't a sign of spiritual failure but an indication that he needed to approach sleep with the same mindfulness he brought to meditation. Once he learned the proper techniques, Ananda not only slept deeply but began receiving profound teachings in his dreams. The fourth lesson reveals the Buddhist understanding of what they call the 6 realms of sleep consciousness. Most people think there's only one way to sleep, but Buddhist psychology recognizes 6 distinct states of consciousness that can occur during sleep, ranging from the hell realm of nightmares and restless sleep to the God realm of deeply peaceful, restorative rest. By learning to recognize which realm your sleep consciousness typically inhabits, you can use specific practices to elevate your sleep to higher realms. The 5th lesson teaches the practice of dying before death as preparation for sleep. This isn't as morbid as it sounds. Buddhist philosophy sees sleep as a daily opportunity to practice the art of letting go, which is essential preparation for the ultimate letting go of death. When you learn to release your grip on your identity, your worries, and your need to control outcomes as you prepare for sleep, you discover a freedom that goes beyond mere rest. You touch something eternal and unshakable within yourself. This practice begins with understanding that the person who goes to sleep at night is not exactly the same person who wakes up in the morning. During sleep, your cells regenerate, your memories consolidate, and your consciousness processes the experiences of the day. You literally die to who you were and are reborn as a slightly different version of yourself each morning. When you understand this process and work with it consciously, sleep becomes a tool for transformation rather than just recuperation. The sixth lesson introduces the concept of merit dedication before sleep. In Buddhist practice, practitioners dedicate the positive actions and thoughts of their day to the benefit of all beings before they sleep. This practice serves multiple purposes. It helps you end the day on a positive note, reviewing what went well rather than obsessing over problems. It connects you to something larger than your personal concerns, which naturally calms the ego mind. And it creates a sense of completion that allows your nervous system to shift into rest mode. The seventh lesson reveals the Buddhist teaching on right livelihood as it relates to sleep. Buddha taught that how you make your living affects not just your waking consciousness but your sleep consciousness as well. If you spend your days in work that conflicts with your values, that harms others, or that keeps you in constant stress, these energetic imprints will follow you into your sleep. The lesson isn't necessarily that you need to change your job immediately, but that you need to find ways to align your daily activities with your deepest values and to purify any negative energies you may have accumulated during the day. This purification process involves specific breathing techniques, forgiveness practices, and energy clearing methods that Buddhist practitioners have used for centuries. When you clear the energetic residue of your day before sleep, you create space for the deeper healing and renewal that sleep makes possible. The eighth lesson teaches what Buddhists call the middle way approach to sleep. Just as Buddha taught that spiritual liberation comes not through extreme asceticism or indulgence but through the balanced middle path, proper sleep hygiene involves finding the balance between too much sleep and too little sleep, between trying too hard to sleep and not caring enough about sleep quality. This lesson is particularly relevant in our modern world, where some people glorify sleep deprivation as a sign of productivity, while others use excessive sleep as a way to escape from life's challenges. The Buddhist middle way approach to sleep involves understanding your body's natural rhythms, respecting your need for rest without becoming attached to sleep as an escape mechanism, and approaching sleep with the same balanced mindfulness you would bring to any other important life activity. The ninth lesson delves into the practice of loving-kindness meditation specifically adapted for bedtime. Traditional loving-kindness practice involves extending goodwill and compassion first to yourself, then to loved ones, then to neutral people, then to difficult people, and finally to all beings everywhere. The bedtime version of this practice helps resolve any interpersonal tensions from the day. Forgive yourself for any mistakes you made, and surround yourself with a field of love and compassion that naturally promotes peaceful sleep. Many people carry the stress of relationship conflicts, work tensions, or family drama into their sleep, where these unresolved energies create restlessness and disturbing dreams. The loving-kindness practice acts like an energetic shower, washing away the psychic residue of difficult interactions and replacing it with genuine warmth and compassion. When your heart is at peace with others, your mind can rest. The 10th lesson introduces the concept of dream incubation from Buddhist practice. Rather than simply hoping for peaceful sleep, Buddhist practitioners learn to set intentions for their dream states, asking for guidance, healing, or insight to come through their dreams. This isn't wishful thinking, but a sophisticated practice based on the understanding that the dreaming mind has access to wisdom that the waking mind cannot reach. The practice involves specific visualizations, mantras, and mental preparations done just before sleep that program your subconscious mind to work on particular issues while you sleep. Practitioners report receiving solutions to problems, healing for emotional wounds, and spiritual insights through this practice. Even if you don't remember your dreams clearly, setting these intentions creates a background process of healing and problem-solving that continues throughout the night. The 11th lesson teaches the 5 remembrances practice adapted for bedtime reflection. The traditional 5 remembrances are contemplations on impermanence, karma, and the preciousness of human life. The bedtime version helps you put the day's challenges in perspective, appreciate the gift of being alive, and connect with the deeper meaning of your existence before you sleep. This practice might seem heavy for bedtime, but practitioners find it profoundly settling. When you remember that your problems are temporary, that your actions matter, and that your life is precious, the small worries that usually keep you awake begin to lose their grip on your mind. You connect with something vast and eternal that puts your daily concerns in proper perspective. The 12th lesson reveals the Buddhist understanding of interdependence as it relates to sleep. Nothing exists independently, including your sleep patterns. Your rest is connected to the sleep of your family members, the peace in your community, the health of your environment, and the well-being of all life on Earth. This isn't just philosophy, but practical wisdom for improving your sleep. When you understand that your insomnia might be connected to your partner's stress, your community's anxiety, or even global suffering, you can expand your healing practices beyond just personal techniques. This lesson teaches specific practices for creating harmony in your sleeping environment, sending peaceful energy to others who might be struggling with sleep, and contributing to collective peace through your own rest practices. The 13th lesson introduces impermanence meditation as the ultimate cure for the anxiety that often underlies insomnia. Much of our sleeplessness comes from worrying about future events or replaying past mistakes. Buddhist impermanence practice helps you realize that everything is constantly changing, including your current problems, your emotional states, and even your sleeplessness itself. This isn't about becoming indifferent to your challenges, but about finding the peace that comes from accepting the temporary nature of all experiences. When you truly understand that this too shall pass, including your current bout of insomnia, you can relax into the present moment where peace is always available. The 14th and final lesson synthesizes all the previous teachings into what Buddhists call effortless effort. The paradoxical practice of trying without trying, of caring without attachment, of seeking sleep without chasing it. This lesson teaches you how to create all the right conditions for sleep while simultaneously letting go of the need for any particular outcome. This is perhaps the most sophisticated lesson because it addresses the core paradox of insomnia. The harder you try to sleep, the more elusive sleep becomes. Buddhist philosophy offers a solution through understanding the difference between skillful effort and forced effort, between creating favorable conditions and demanding specific results. These 14 lessons work together to address insomnia on every level: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. They don't just help you fall asleep faster or sleep longer, they transform your entire relationship with rest, with consciousness, and with the natural cycles of life. They turn your bedroom into a temple, your sleep into a spiritual practice, and your awakening into a daily rebirth. As we prepare to explore each of these lessons in detail, remember that Buddhist teachings are not just intellectual concepts to understand, but practical tools to embody. Each lesson includes specific practices, meditations, and lifestyle adjustments that you can begin implementing immediately. Some will resonate more strongly than others, depending on your particular sleep challenges and spiritual inclinations. The beauty of the Buddhist approach is that it meets you wherever you are. Whether you're dealing with occasional sleeplessness or chronic insomnia, whether you're spiritually inclined or completely skeptical about meditation, whether you have 5 minutes or an hour to dedicate to sleep preparation, these teachings offer something valuable. Most importantly, these lessons recognize that lasting change happens gradually and gently. You're not going to transform a lifetime of sleep struggles overnight, but by working patiently and consistently with these ancient teachings, you'll begin to notice shifts in your sleep quality, your daytime energy, your emotional resilience, and your overall sense of well-being. The path to perfect sleep begins with a single conscious breath, taken mindfully as you prepare for rest. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, remember that you're not just ending another day. You're participating in one of humanity's most ancient and sacred practices, the art of conscious rest, the practice of surrendering to the great mystery of sleep and the daily opportunity to touch something eternal within yourself. The journey into Buddhist sleep wisdom begins with understanding a fundamental truth that most people miss entirely. Your sleep tonight was determined by how you lived today. This isn't just about whether you drank coffee after 3 o'clock or looked at screens before bed, though these things matter. This is about something far more profound that goes to the very heart of Buddhist teaching about the interconnectedness of all experience. The first lesson: mindful living creates restful sleep. In the ancient monasteries of Thailand, monks begin preparing for sleep from the moment they wake up. This might seem strange to our modern minds, but Buddhist psychology recognizes that consciousness is like water in a container. Whatever you pour into it during the day will still be there when you lie down at night. If you spend your day pouring in anxiety, anger, rushing, and reactivity, these mental states will be swirling in your consciousness when you try to rest. But if you spend your day cultivating mindfulness, compassion, patience, and presence, these qualities will naturally support peaceful sleep. The first lesson teaches you to become aware of what Buddhists call your mental formations throughout the day. These are the habitual patterns of thinking, feeling, and reacting that shape your experience. Most people go through their days unconsciously accumulating stress, tension, and mental agitation without realizing how this affects their ability to rest. They snap at their partner during breakfast, feel frustrated in traffic, worry about deadlines all afternoon, then wonder why their mind won't quiet down at bedtime. Buddhist practice offers a different way. It teaches you to notice these mental formations as they arise and to respond to them with wisdom rather than reactivity. When you feel anger beginning to rise, instead of feeding it with more angry thoughts, you can breathe mindfully and choose a more skillful response. When anxiety starts to grip your mind, instead of getting caught in worry spirals, you can return to the present moment where peace is always available. This isn't about suppressing difficult emotions or pretending everything is fine when it's not. Buddhist teachings are actually very realistic about the challenges of life. The difference is that instead of being swept away by every emotional storm, you learn to remain grounded in awareness, observing your experiences without being overwhelmed by them. This quality of mindful awareness naturally creates the internal conditions for peaceful sleep. Consider the practice of mindful speech throughout your day. Buddhist teachings emphasize that how you speak affects not just others but your own mental state. When you speak harshly, gossip about others, or complain constantly, you're creating agitation in your own consciousness. But when you speak kindly, truthfully, and helpfully, you're cultivating peace within yourself. By bedtime, the person who has spent the day speaking mindfully will have a much quieter mind than the person who has spent the day in harsh or careless speech. The same principle applies to mindful listening. Most people listen partially, already formulating their response while the other person is still talking. Or they listen while multitasking, checking their phone, or thinking about other things. This scattered attention creates internal fragmentation that follows you into sleep. But when you listen fully, giving your complete attention to whoever is speaking, you're practicing the kind of present moment awareness that naturally supports rest. Buddhist teachings also emphasize mindful working as preparation for sleep. This doesn't mean you need to change your job or work in a monastery. It means bringing present moment awareness to whatever work you do. When you work mindfully, you're fully engaged with the task at hand rather than mentally scattered across multiple concerns. You take breaks when you need them instead of pushing through exhaustion. You maintain awareness of your breath and body posture instead of getting completely lost in mental activity. One of the most powerful practices from this first lesson is what Tibetan Buddhists call checking in with yourself throughout the day. Every few hours, you pause and ask yourself, how is my body feeling right now? What is the quality of my mind? Am I holding tension anywhere? Am I caught in worry or reactivity? This simple practice of self-awareness allows you to release accumulating stress before it builds up to the point where it interferes with sleep. The checking-in practice includes 3 components: body awareness, breath awareness, and mind awareness. For body awareness, you scan from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, noticing any areas of tension and consciously releasing them. You might discover that you've been holding your shoulders tight, clenching your jaw, or sitting with poor posture. Simply noticing these patterns and adjusting them prevents tension from accumulating throughout the day. For breath awareness, you notice whether you're breathing shallowly or holding your breath due to stress, and you consciously return to deeper, more natural breathing. Many people don't realize that anxiety and worry cause them to breathe in a restricted way that actually increases their stress levels. By returning to conscious breathing several times throughout the day, you're training your nervous system to remain calm rather than chronically activated. For mind awareness, you notice the quality of your thoughts without judging them. Are you caught in worry loops about the future? Are you replaying past conversations or mistakes? Are you mentally arguing with someone? Are you rushing mentally even when you don't need to hurry physically? Simply becoming aware of these mental patterns gives you the choice to redirect your attention to something more peaceful and constructive. Another crucial aspect of this first lesson involves understanding what Buddhism calls right livelihood in relation to sleep. While you may not be able to completely change your work situation immediately, you can begin to align your daily activities more closely with your values and well-being. This might mean setting better boundaries at work, saying no to commitments that drain your energy unnecessarily, or finding small ways to make your work more meaningful and less stressful. Buddhist teaching recognizes that when you spend your days in activities that conflict with your deeper values or that harm others, this creates what they call unwholesome karma that disturbs your peace of mind. You don't need to become a perfect person overnight, but you can begin making choices that support rather than undermine your well-being. Each choice to act with kindness rather than harshness, to be truthful rather than deceptive, to be helpful rather than harmful, contributes to the mental peace that supports restful sleep. The first lesson also introduces the practice of transitional mindfulness, bringing conscious awareness to the transitions throughout your day. Most people rush from one activity to another without pause, creating a momentum of hurried energy that's difficult to stop when bedtime arrives. Buddhist practice teaches you to pause mindfully between activities, taking a few conscious breaths and mentally completing one activity before beginning the next. This might look like taking 3 deep breaths before you start your car after work, consciously shifting from work mode to driving mode. It might mean pausing at your front door when you arrive home, taking a moment to transition from your outside-the-house identity to your at-home identity. It might involve sitting quietly for a minute after finishing dinner before moving on to evening activities, allowing your body to properly digest not just your food but your entire day's experiences. These transitional moments serve as reset points throughout your day, preventing the accumulation of stress and mental agitation that often interferes with sleep. They also train you in the art of conscious transition, which becomes especially important when you're transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. Buddhist psychology teaches that one of the main causes of insomnia is what they call unfinished mental business, worries, concerns, or emotional reactions from the day that haven't been properly processed or resolved. The first lesson includes practices for completing your mental business throughout the day so that these unresolved energies don't follow you into sleep. One such practice is hourly forgiveness, where you consciously forgive yourself and others for any mistakes, misunderstandings, or difficulties that occurred during the previous hour. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or avoiding necessary conversations about problems. It means releasing the mental and emotional residue of difficult experiences so they don't accumulate in your consciousness. Another practice is gratitude moments, where you pause several times throughout the day to appreciate something good that's happening or has happened. This trains your mind to notice positive experiences rather than only focusing on problems and challenges. By bedtime, a person who has practiced gratitude moments throughout the day will have a mind more naturally inclined toward peace and contentment. The first lesson concludes with understanding that mindful living isn't about being perfect or never experiencing stress, anxiety, or difficult emotions. It's about changing your relationship to these experiences so they don't dominate your consciousness. Buddhist teachings compare the untrained mind to a glass of muddy water where every small disturbance stirs up the sediment and makes the water cloudy. But the trained mind is like a deep, clear lake where storms may occur on the surface, but the depths remain calm and clear. When you live mindfully throughout the day, you're developing this quality of inner depth and stability that naturally supports restful sleep. Your mind learns to settle like sediment in still water, and sleep comes not as something you have to chase, but as something that naturally occurs when the conditions are right. This first lesson requires patience and practice because it involves changing deeply ingrained habits of thinking and reacting that may have developed over many years. But Buddhist teachings emphasize that every moment offers a fresh opportunity to begin again. You don't have to wait until tomorrow to start living more mindfully. You can begin right now, with your very next breath, your very next interaction, your very next choice about how to respond to whatever's happening in your life. The beauty of this approach is that as you learn to live more mindfully, you're not just improving your sleep, you're improving your entire quality of life. You're becoming more present with loved ones, more effective at work, more resilient in the face of challenges, and more connected to the joy and beauty that surround you every day. Your improved sleep becomes just one of many benefits of learning to live with greater wisdom and awareness. As you begin to implement these practices, remember that Buddhist teachings emphasize gradual progress rather than dramatic transformation. You might choose to focus on just one aspect of mindful living each week. Perhaps mindful speech one week, mindful listening the next, then transitional mindfulness, and so on. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Each moment of mindfulness, no matter how brief, contributes to the internal conditions that support peaceful sleep. The foundation of mindful living naturally leads us to the second profound lesson that Buddhist masters have taught for centuries: understanding and dissolving the three mental poisons that are the true root cause of sleeplessness. While modern sleep medicine focuses on symptoms, racing thoughts, physical tension, environmental factors, Buddhism goes deeper, addressing the fundamental states of mind that create restlessness in the first place. The second lesson: the three poisons and the path to inner peace. In the great meditation halls of ancient India, the Buddha identified three mental states that he called the three poisons, because they poison our peace of mind just as surely as toxins poison the body. These three poisons, greed, hatred, and delusion, might seem like abstract philosophical concepts, but when you understand how they manifest in your daily experience and especially in your relationship with sleep, they become practical keys to transformation. The first poison, greed, appears in your sleep experience as the grasping mind that cannot let go of the day's experiences. This isn't just about wanting material things, though that's part of it. This is about the mind's tendency to grasp onto pleasant experiences, trying to make them last longer than they naturally would, and to grasp onto unpleasant experiences through worry and rumination, unable to release them even when they're over. Think about your own bedtime experience. How often do you lie in bed replaying a compliment someone gave you, trying to squeeze more pleasure from the memory? Or conversely, how often do you replay a criticism, a mistake, or an awkward interaction, your mind grasping onto the discomfort and spinning it into larger stories about your inadequacy or future problems? This grasping quality of mind creates the mental restlessness that prevents natural sleep. Buddhist teaching offers specific practices to address mental grasping. One of the most effective is called letting go meditation, which you can practice right in bed. As thoughts arise, whether pleasant or unpleasant, you mentally say, "thinking," and then consciously release the thought, like opening your hand to let go of a small object. You don't fight the thoughts or judge them. You simply notice them and let them go. This practice acknowledges that thinking is natural, especially during the transition from waking to sleeping consciousness, but you don't have to engage with every thought that arises. You can observe thoughts the way you might observe clouds passing in the sky, present, but not requiring your active participation. The grasping mind wants to analyze, solve, or enjoy every thought, but the wise mind knows that some thoughts are better left alone. Another powerful practice for addressing greed involves what Tibetan Buddhism calls contentment meditation. Before sleep, you mentally review your day and find genuine appreciation for what was sufficient about it. This isn't about pretending everything was perfect or avoiding legitimate concerns. It's about recognizing that despite whatever challenges occurred, you had enough food, enough shelter, enough safety, enough love to get through another day of life. This practice counteracts the mind's tendency to focus on what was lacking, what went wrong, or what you need to acquire or achieve tomorrow to feel better about yourself. The contented mind naturally settles into rest because it's not driven by the restless energy of constantly wanting something different than what is. The second poison, hatred, manifests in your sleep experience as all forms of aversion, anger, resentment, irritation, judgment, and resistance to your current experience. You might lie in bed feeling angry about something that happened during the day, annoyed with your partner's sleeping habits, frustrated with your own inability to fall asleep quickly, or judgmental about your racing thoughts. Hatred poisoning is particularly insidious because it often masquerades as being justified or even helpful. You tell yourself that staying angry about injustice shows you care about what's right, or that worrying about problems means you're being responsible. But Buddhist psychology reveals that these mental states create suffering for you without actually solving any problems or correcting any injustices. The antidote to hatred poison is what Buddhism calls loving kindness or metta practice. This isn't about becoming passive or excusing harmful behavior. It's about freeing yourself from the internal poison of resentment and aversion so you can respond to life's challenges from wisdom rather than reactivity. The bedtime version of loving-kindness practice begins with extending genuine goodwill toward yourself. You mentally say phrases like, "May I be happy, may I be peaceful, may I be free from suffering, may I sleep well tonight." This isn't just positive thinking. It's actively cultivating the heart quality of unconditional friendliness toward your own experience. Many people are shocked to discover how difficult it is to genuinely wish themselves well. They've become so habituated to self-criticism, self-doubt, and self-judgment that offering themselves the same kindness they would naturally offer to a good friend feels foreign or even selfish. But Buddhist teaching emphasizes that you can only give to others what you possess within yourself. If you can't access genuine warmth and acceptance for your own struggles, you can't offer authentic compassion to anyone else. After establishing loving kindness toward yourself, you extend the same goodwill to others, starting with people you love easily, then gradually including neutral people, difficult people, and eventually all beings everywhere. This practice might seem time-consuming, but even a few minutes of sincere loving-kindness practice can dramatically shift your mental state from agitation to peace. For dealing with specific resentments or anger from your day, Buddhism teaches a practice called forgiveness meditation. This doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior or avoiding necessary boundaries. It means releasing the mental and emotional poison of carrying resentment, which hurts you far more than it affects anyone else. The practice involves mentally acknowledging your anger or hurt feelings, recognizing that holding on to these feelings is causing you suffering, and then consciously choosing to release them for your own well-being. You might say something like, "I was hurt by what happened today, and holding on to this hurt is preventing my peace. For my own healing, I choose to let this go." The third poison, delusion, appears in your sleep experience as confusion, mental fog, and the various ways your mind creates suffering through misunderstanding the nature of reality. The most common delusion that affects sleep is the belief that your current discomfort or restlessness is permanent and solid. that your insomnia defines you, or that you'll never be able to sleep peacefully. Delusion also manifests as what Buddhism calls story-making. Your mind's tendency to create elaborate narratives about simple experiences. Instead of just noticing, "I'm having trouble falling asleep tonight," your mind creates stories like, "I'm terrible at sleeping. I'll be exhausted tomorrow. This will affect my work performance. My boss will think I'm incompetent. I might lose my job. I'll never be successful. I'm fundamentally flawed." These story-making patterns create exponentially more suffering than the original experience itself. Buddhist psychology teaches you to distinguish between direct experience and the stories your mind creates about that experience. The direct experience of lying awake isn't inherently problematic. It's just what's happening right now. The suffering comes from the layers of interpretation, judgment, and projection that your mind adds to the simple fact of being awake. The antidote to delusion is what Buddhism calls clear seeing or wisdom. This involves learning to see experiences as they actually are, rather than through the filters of your fears, hopes, assumptions, and habitual mental patterns. When you apply clear seeing to your sleep experience, you realize that being awake in bed is just being awake in bed. Nothing more, nothing less. This clear seeing practice involves what Buddhist teachers call noting or mental labeling. When you notice your mind creating stories about your sleep experience, you simply note story making and return your attention to direct experience. When you notice judgment arising about your inability to sleep, you note judging and let it go. When you notice worrying about tomorrow, you note worrying and come back to this moment. The noting practice helps you develop what Buddhism calls the witnessing mind, the part of your consciousness that can observe your thoughts and emotions without being caught up in them. This witnessing awareness is naturally peaceful because it's not invested in any particular outcome. It can be present with sleepfulness or sleeplessness with equal equanimity. One of the most powerful applications of wisdom practice involves understanding what Buddhism calls impermanence. The fact that all experiences are constantly changing. Your current state of restlessness or insomnia is not permanent, no matter how solid it might feel in the moment. Everything that arises also passes away, including difficult emotional states, physical discomfort, and mental agitation. When you truly understand impermanence, you can relax even in the midst of discomfort because you know it won't last forever. You don't have to fix your current state or make it different. You just have to be patient with it while it naturally transforms. This understanding removes the urgency and panic that often make insomnia worse. Buddhist teaching also addresses what they call the comparing mind as a form of delusion that particularly affects sleep. You might lie in bed thinking about how easily your partner falls asleep, or remembering how well you used to sleep, or worrying that you're not sleeping as well as you should be sleeping. This comparing mind creates additional layers of suffering on top of whatever sleep difficulties you're actually experiencing. The wisdom practice involves recognizing that your sleep experience is unique to you in this moment. Comparing your current sleep to your past sleep, to other people's sleep, or to some idealized version of perfect sleep only creates more mental agitation. The wise mind accepts your current experience as the starting point and works skillfully with whatever is actually present. Another aspect of the delusion poison involves what Buddhism calls attachment to outcomes. You might lie in bed desperately wanting to fall asleep by a certain time, or needing to get exactly 8 hours of sleep, or requiring your sleep to be completely uninterrupted. These attachments create a tense, grasping quality of mind that's incompatible with the relaxed receptivity that sleep requires. The wisdom practice involves holding your sleep intentions lightly. You create favorable conditions for sleep, comfortable temperature, dark room, relaxed body, but you don't demand that sleep happen in any particular way or time frame. You offer an invitation to sleep rather than making demands of it. This approach might seem counterintuitive because our culture teaches us that we should have goals and work hard to achieve them. But sleep is one area where effort often backfires. The more you try to force sleep, the more elusive it becomes. Buddhist wisdom teaches you to make skillful effort, creating good conditions and practicing helpful techniques, while simultaneously letting go of attachment to specific results. Working with the three poisons involves what Buddhism calls the middle way, not suppressing these mental states or pretending they don't exist, but also not being overwhelmed or controlled by them. You acknowledge greed, hatred, and delusion when they arise, understand that they're natural human experiences, and then use skillful practices to transform them into wisdom, compassion, and peace. The beautiful thing about working with the three poisons in relation to sleep is that the benefits extend far beyond better rest. As you learn to release mental grasping, dissolve resentment and aversion, and see your experiences clearly without the distortion of mental stories, you're developing qualities of mind that improve every aspect of your life. Your relationships become more harmonious, your work becomes more effective, and your general sense of well-being increases significantly. The practices for working with the three poisons are most effective when done consistently over time. You might spend a week focusing on noticing and releasing mental grasping, another week working specifically with forgiveness and loving kindness, and a third week practicing clear seeing and letting go of story making. Gradually, these practices become integrated into a natural wisdom that supports not just better sleep, but a more peaceful and fulfilling way of living. As you begin to work with the three poisons and feel their grip loosening on your consciousness, you naturally arrive at the third lesson, which reveals one of Buddhism's most elegant and powerful teachings, the art of conscious breathing as the bridge between waking and sleeping states. This isn't simply about breathing exercises or relaxation techniques, though these have their place. This is about understanding breath as the thread that connects your conscious mind to the deeper wisdom of your body, and learning to use this connection to guide yourself gently into the most restorative sleep. The third lesson, the sacred breath, gateway to deep rest. In the mountain monasteries of Tibet, where the air is thin and every breath is precious, monks have developed perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of breathing practices in the world. They recognize that breath is not just a physical function, but a bridge between the conscious and unconscious mind, between the voluntary and involuntary nervous systems, between the world of effort and the world of surrender that sleep requires. The third lesson begins with a profound shift in understanding. Your breath has been with you every moment of your life, never abandoning you, never judging you, always available as an anchor of peace regardless of what chaos might be happening in your mind or your external circumstances. Yet most people take thousands of breaths each day without ever truly connecting with this intimate companion that holds the key to deep rest. Buddhist breathing practice for sleep starts with what they call breath awareness. Simply noticing that you're breathing without trying to change or control it. This might sound almost too simple to be effective, but this basic awareness practice begins to activate what neuroscientists now call the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch of your nervous system responsible for rest, digestion, and healing. As you lie in bed preparing for sleep, place one hand gently on your chest and one on your belly, without trying to breathe differently. Just notice how your breath moves your body. Does your chest rise and fall more than your belly, or vice versa? Is your breathing shallow or deep, fast or slow, smooth or irregular? There's no right or wrong way to breathe in this moment. You're simply becoming acquainted with your breath as it naturally is. This simple awareness already begins to shift your nervous system toward rest because attention itself has a calming effect. When you're paying attention to your breath, you're not lost in the mental stories and worries that typically keep you awake. You're anchored in direct, immediate experience rather than abstract thinking about the past or future. The next level of practice involves what Tibetan Buddhism calls following the breath. Instead of just noticing that you're breathing, You follow the entire journey of each breath from the moment it begins entering your nostrils, through your throat, into your lungs, then back out the same path. This following practice requires a degree of concentrated attention that naturally draws your mind away from scattered thinking and into present moment awareness. As you follow your breath, you might notice that your mind wanders frequently. Suddenly you realize you've been thinking about tomorrow's schedule or replaying a conversation from earlier. This wandering is completely normal and doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Buddhist teaching emphasizes that noticing when your mind has wandered and gently returning attention to your breath is actually the practice itself. Each return to breath awareness is strengthening your ability to stay present. One of the most powerful breathing practices for sleep comes from the Zen tradition and is called counting breaths. As you lie in bed, you count each exhale, starting with 1 and going up to 10, then starting over at 1. If you lose count or your mind wanders, you simply begin again at 1 without judgment or frustration. This practice gives your thinking mind a simple task to focus on while allowing your breathing to guide you towards sleep. Many people find that they rarely make it to 10 before either falling asleep or losing count, and both outcomes are perfectly fine. The purpose isn't to achieve perfect counting, but to give your mind something harmless to focus on instead of worrying or planning. The counting serves as what Buddhism calls a skillful means, a technique that guides your consciousness in a helpful direction without force or strain. For those who find counting too stimulating, Buddhist tradition offers an even gentler approach called breathing with phrases. You mentally repeat calming phrases in rhythm with your breathing, such as breathing in, I calm my body on the inhale, and breathing out, I release all tension on the exhale, or simply calm on the inhale and peace on the exhale. These phrases work on multiple levels. They give your thinking mind something peaceful to focus on. They reinforce the intention to relax and let go, and they create a meditative rhythm that naturally slows down your mental activity. You can use traditional Buddhist phrases or create your own, choosing words that feel particularly soothing or meaningful to you. The breathing practices become even more powerful when combined with what Buddhism calls body awareness. As you breathe mindfully, you also scan through your body, noticing areas of tension and consciously releasing them with each exhale. You might start at the top of your head, breathing into your scalp and forehead, then letting go of any tightness there as you exhale. Continue this process through your face, neck, and shoulders, areas where many people hold stress from the day. With each inhale, you bring gentle awareness to that part of your body. With each exhale, you invite that area to soften and release. This isn't about forcing relaxation, but about offering your body the opportunity to let go of unnecessary tension. Buddhist teaching recognizes that the body holds emotional and mental stress in physical form. The tight shoulders might be carrying the weight of responsibilities. The clenched jaw might be holding back words you wanted to say but didn't. The constricted breathing might reflect anxiety or fear that you haven't fully acknowledged. By breathing mindfully into these areas, you're offering healing attention to both the physical and emotional dimensions of tension. One particularly effective variation involves what Tibetan practitioners call the healing breath. As you inhale, you imagine breathing in whatever qualities you most need, perhaps peace, comfort, strength, or love. As you exhale, you imagine breathing out whatever you're ready to release, tension, worry, pain, or frustration. This visualization engages your imagination in support of relaxation rather than in creating more elaborate worries or fantasies. The healing breath practice can be adapted for specific sleep challenges. If your mind is racing with thoughts, you might breathe in clarity and breathe out mental confusion. If you're feeling emotionally agitated, you might breathe in calm and breathe out restlessness. If you're physically uncomfortable, you might breathe in ease and breathe out discomfort. Buddhist breathing practice also includes understanding different qualities of breath and how they affect your consciousness. Fast, Shallow breathing tends to activate your nervous system and increase alertness. Slow, deep breathing tends to calm your nervous system and promote rest. But the transition from alert breathing to restful breathing should happen gradually and naturally rather than being forced. Many people make the mistake of trying to breathe very deeply or slowly right away, which can actually create more tension. Buddhist approach emphasizes what they call natural deepening, allowing your breath to gradually slow down and deepen as your nervous system relaxes, rather than imposing a particular breathing pattern from the beginning. This natural approach respects your body's wisdom and works with your natural rhythms rather than against them. As you continue breathing mindfully, you may notice that your exhales naturally become longer than your inhales, which is a sign that your nervous system is shifting toward rest mode. You don't need to make this happen. Just allow it to occur naturally as you maintain gentle awareness of your breathing. Advanced Buddhist breathing practice includes what they call breath retention or holding the breath, but these techniques require proper instruction and aren't recommended for beginners or for bedtime practice. The simpler awareness and counting practices are actually more effective for sleep because they don't stimulate the nervous system through breath manipulation. One of the most beautiful aspects of Buddhist breathing practice is understanding breath as connection rather than just personal relaxation. As you breathe mindfully, you can remember that you're breathing the same air that has been breathed by countless beings throughout history. The oxygen you're inhaling was created by plants and trees around the world. Your exhale will become part of the atmosphere that sustains all life on Earth. This sense of connection through breath can be profoundly comforting when you're feeling alone or isolated in your sleeplessness. You're participating in the fundamental rhythm of life that connects you to all living beings. This universal breathing meditation can transform insomnia from a personal problem into a shared human experience that you can meet with compassion rather than frustration. Buddhist teaching also addresses what they call breath and emotion, understanding how different emotional states affect your breathing and how conscious breathing can help transform difficult emotions. When you're anxious, your breathing tends to become shallow and rapid. When you're angry, your breathing might become forceful and irregular. When you're sad, your breathing might become sighing or constricted. By bringing mindful awareness to your breathing when difficult emotions arise at bedtime, you can work skillfully with these states rather than being overwhelmed by them. If you notice anxiety affecting your breath, you can consciously invite your breathing to slow down and deepen, which sends signals to your nervous system that you're safe and can relax. The practice of breathing with emotions involves neither suppressing feelings nor being carried away by them. Instead, you breathe consciously while allowing emotions to be present, using your breath as a stable foundation that can hold whatever feelings arise without being destabilized by them. This approach honors your emotional experience while preventing emotions from creating the kind of agitation that interferes with sleep. For people whose minds are particularly active at bedtime, Buddhist tradition offers a practice called breathing into thoughts. Instead of fighting with thinking or getting frustrated by mental activity, you can breathe into the space around your thoughts, imagining your breath creating more room in your mind for thoughts to arise and pass away without creating stress. This practice recognizes that trying to stop thinking often creates more mental tension. Instead of fighting with your thinking mind, you create a spacious, accepting awareness that can accommodate mental activity without being disturbed by it. Your thoughts become like clouds passing through the vast sky of your awareness rather than like walls that trap you in mental prison. The breathing practices work synergistically with the previous lessons about mindful living and working with the three poisons. As you breathe mindfully, you naturally release the grasping quality of mind that characterizes greed. As you breathe with acceptance and kindness toward your current experience, you dissolve the aversion and resistance that characterize hatred. As you breathe with clear, present moment awareness, you see through the mental stories and confusion that characterize delusion. Over time, these breathing practices become so integrated into your sleep preparation that you don't need to think about them consciously. Your body learns to associate conscious breathing with the transition toward sleep, and the practices begin to work automatically. Simply lying down and taking a few mindful breaths becomes a signal to your entire system that it's time to shift into rest mode. The beauty of Buddhist breathing practice is that it requires no special equipment, no particular physical ability, and no specific beliefs or philosophical understanding. Your breath is always with you, always available as a pathway to peace, regardless of your circumstances or challenges. Whether you're dealing with temporary stress or chronic insomnia, whether you're spiritually inclined or completely secular in your approach, conscious breathing offers a practical and effective tool for better sleep. As your breathing naturally deepens and your nervous system begins to settle into the rhythm of approaching rest, you encounter the fourth lesson that transforms the very foundation of how you understand your relationship with sleep itself. This lesson reveals one of Buddhism's most profound insights, that sleep is not something you do or achieve, but something you allow yourself to receive through the practice of conscious surrender. The fourth lesson: the art of letting go, from effort to effortlessness. In the quiet halls of Japanese Zen monasteries, there's a teaching story that perfectly captures the essence of this fourth lesson. A student approached his master, frustrated because despite practicing meditation for years, he still struggled with sleeplessness. "Master," he said, "I try so hard to sleep. I use every technique. I follow every instruction. But sleep continues to elude me. What am I doing wrong?" The master smiled gently and replied, "You are trying to catch sleep the way a child tries to catch his own shadow. The harder he runs toward it, the faster it runs away from him. But if he stops chasing and simply sits still, the shadow comes to rest beneath him naturally." This story illuminates one of the great paradoxes of insomnia. The more effort you put into trying to sleep, the more elusive sleep becomes. Your very trying creates a state of mental and physical tension that's incompatible with the receptive surrender that sleep requires. The fourth lesson teaches you how to shift from the doing mode of consciousness that dominates your waking hours to the being mode that allows sleep to emerge naturally. Western culture trains us to approach most challenges with more effort, more control, more trying. If something isn't working, we're taught to try harder, use more willpower, or find a better technique. But sleep operates according to different principles entirely. Sleep comes not through effort, but through release, not through control, but through trust, not through doing, but through allowing. Buddhist psychology recognizes two fundamental modes of consciousness, what they call grasping mind and receiving mind. Grasping mind is characterized by effort, control, manipulation, and the attempt to make things happen according to your will. This mode serves you well in many areas of life: work projects, learning new skills, solving problems. But grasping mind is the enemy of sleep because it creates the very activation and tension that sleep must dissolve. Receiving mind, by contrast, is characterized by openness, receptivity, trust, and the willingness to allow experiences to unfold naturally. This is the consciousness that allows you to receive gifts, to be surprised by beauty, to fall in love, and to fall asleep. You cannot force yourself to receive. You can only create the conditions that make receiving possible, and then open yourself to what wants to emerge. The practice of shifting from grasping mind to receiving mind begins with understanding what Buddhism calls non-doing, or Wu Wei in Chinese philosophy. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up completely. It means learning to make skillful effort while simultaneously letting go of attachment to specific outcomes. You create favorable conditions for sleep: comfortable environment, relaxed body, peaceful mind. But you don't demand that sleep arrive at any particular time or in any particular way. One of the most effective practices for cultivating receiving mind is called offering yourself to sleep. Instead of trying to grab sleep or chase after it, you lie in bed and mentally offer yourself as a gift to the natural process of sleep. You might say silently, "I offer my tired body to the healing of sleep. I offer my busy mind to the peace of sleep. I offer my whole being to whatever rest wants to come through me tonight." This offering practice creates a fundamental shift in your relationship with sleep. Instead of seeing sleep as something you need to obtain or achieve, you begin to experience it as something that wants to happen through you when the conditions are right. You become a participant in sleep rather than a controller of sleep. The offering practice works because it aligns you with what Buddhists understand as the natural flow of life energy. Just as you don't have to remember to make your heart beat or your hair grow, you don't have to make sleep happen. Sleep is built into the natural rhythm of consciousness. Your job is not to create sleep, but to remove the obstacles that prevent sleep from occurring naturally. These obstacles are usually forms of mental and physical holding on to the day's experiences, holding on to tomorrow's concerns, holding tension in your body, holding expectations about how sleep should happen. The art of letting go involves consciously releasing each of these forms of holding one by one until you arrive at a state of complete receptivity. Buddhist teaching offers a systematic approach to this release process, beginning with what they call letting go of the day. As you lie in bed, you mentally review the day that's ending and consciously complete it. You acknowledge what happened, both pleasant and challenging experiences, without trying to change or fix anything. You express gratitude for what went well and forgiveness for what was difficult. You essentially say goodbye to this day, releasing your mental and emotional investment in its events. This daily completion practice prevents you from carrying unfinished emotional business into your sleep. Many people lie awake replaying conversations, planning what they should have said differently, or worrying about how today's events might affect tomorrow's possibilities. The completion practice helps you recognize that today is finished. Whatever happened has already happened, and holding on to it mentally serves no useful purpose. After completing the day, you practice letting go of tomorrow. This involves acknowledging that tomorrow will bring whatever it brings, and that no amount of mental rehearsal tonight will guarantee any particular outcome tomorrow. You can make reasonable plans and preparations, but ultimately, you must trust that tomorrow's you will have the wisdom and resources to handle tomorrow's challenges. This release of future concerns is often the most difficult aspect of letting go because our minds are conditioned to believe that worrying about the future is a form of preparation or responsibility. Buddhist teaching helps you recognize that constructive planning is different from anxious worrying. Planning involves making skillful decisions based on available information and then letting go of the outcome. Worrying involves mentally rehearsing problems that may never occur and trying to control outcomes that are ultimately beyond your direct influence. The practice of letting go of tomorrow includes a gentle recognition that you cannot live tomorrow tonight. You can only live this moment right now, lying in bed, breathing consciously, allowing your body to rest. Tomorrow will take care of itself when tomorrow arrives, and tonight's most responsible act is to give your body and mind the rest they need to meet tomorrow with clarity and energy. Physical letting go is just as important as mental and emotional release. Buddhist body practices for sleep involve systematically releasing tension from every part of your physical being, starting from the top of your head and moving slowly through each muscle group. But this isn't the kind of forced relaxation where you tense muscles and then release them. This is a gentle invitation to each part of your body to soften and let go. As you bring attention to your scalp, you might notice that you've been holding tension there without realizing it. Instead of forcing it to relax, you simply breathe into that area and invite it to soften if it's ready. You thank your scalp for working so hard during the day and give it permission to rest now. This approach honors your body's wisdom while creating space for natural relaxation to occur. Continue this process through your forehead, around your eyes, through your cheeks and jaw, down your neck and shoulders. Many people discover that they've been holding their body in a state of subtle tension that they weren't even aware of. The gentle attention and invitation to release often allows the body to let go in ways that feel both surprising and deeply relieving. One particularly effective variation involves what Buddhism calls melting meditation. As you breathe mindfully, you imagine each exhale helping your body melt more completely into your bed, like ice cream melting on a warm day or snow melting in spring sunshine. This melting imagery works with your body's natural tendency to soften when it feels safe and supported. The melting practice extends beyond just physical relaxation to include mental and emotional melting as well. You can imagine your worries melting away, your need to control outcomes melting away, your resistance to being exactly where you are right now melting away. Each exhale becomes an opportunity to melt more completely into the present moment. Buddhist teaching also addresses what they call letting go of sleep itself, releasing any attachment to having particular sleep experiences. This might seem counterintuitive when you're learning practices to improve your sleep, but attachment to specific sleep outcomes often creates the very tension that prevents good sleep. You might lie in bed desperately wanting 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, or needing to fall asleep within 15 minutes, or requiring your sleep to be completely dreamless. These attachments create what Buddhism calls sleep grasping, the same grasping mind that prevents sleep in the first place. The practice involves holding your sleep intentions lightly, like cupping water in your hands. You want good sleep and you create conditions that support it, but you don't clench your fists trying to force it to happen. This letting go of sleep expectations includes releasing comparisons to other people's sleep or to your own past sleep experiences. Your sleep tonight is unique to tonight, influenced by countless factors that may be different from any other night. Comparing your current sleep to idealized standards only creates more mental activity and tension. The advanced practice of letting go includes what Tibetan Buddhism calls letting go of the one who sleeps, a profound recognition that even your sense of being someone who needs sleep can become a form of grasping. In the deepest states of letting go, there's no longer a separate self trying to achieve sleep. There's simply consciousness naturally settling into rest. This advanced practice isn't necessary for good sleep, but understanding the principle can be helpful. When you stop being so invested in your identity as someone who struggles with sleep or someone who needs perfect rest, you create space for sleep to happen more naturally. Your sleep challenges become less personal and therefore less emotionally charged. Buddhist letting go practice also includes understanding what they call the rhythm of holding and releasing. Throughout each day, you naturally hold and release countless times, holding your attention on tasks and then releasing into breaks, holding your breath slightly when concentrating and then releasing into deeper breathing when you relax. Sleep is simply the most complete form of daily release. Recognizing this natural rhythm helps you work with your body's wisdom rather than against it. Instead of seeing the need to let go as a personal failing or weakness, you can appreciate it as part of the natural flow of conscious experience. Holding serves its purpose during active periods, and releasing serves its purpose during rest periods. The letting go practices become most effective when they're infused with what Buddhism calls loving acceptance of whatever your current experience happens to be. If you're lying awake, despite practicing letting go, you can extend the same acceptance to sleeplessness that you're cultivating towards sleep. This prevents the secondary suffering that comes from being frustrated about being awake. This loving acceptance doesn't mean giving up or resigning yourself to poor sleep forever. It means meeting your current experience with kindness rather than resistance, which creates the safest possible environment for natural changes to occur. When your nervous system feels completely accepted and safe, it can relax in ways that would be impossible if you were fighting against your current state. The art of letting go is ultimately about trusting the wisdom of life itself, trusting that your body knows how to sleep, that your consciousness knows how to rest, and that the natural rhythms of activity and rest will reassert themselves when you stop interfering with them through excessive effort and control. This trust develops gradually through practice and experience. Each time you let go and discover that sleep comes more easily, you build confidence in the power of non-doing. Each time you release control and find that things work out better than when you tried to force them, you develop faith in the natural intelligence that operates beyond your personal will. The beautiful paradox of the fourth lesson is that learning to let go actually gives you more influence over your sleep quality, not less. When you're not wasting energy trying to control what cannot be controlled, you can put your attention toward what is genuinely helpful, creating supportive conditions, practicing skillful techniques, and maintaining the kind of lifestyle that naturally supports good rest. As you deepen into the practice of letting go and begin to taste the freedom that comes from releasing control, you naturally encounter the fifth lesson, which reveals perhaps Buddhism's most revolutionary insight about the nature of consciousness itself. The understanding that restlessness and peace are not personal problems to be solved, but universal experiences to be met with wisdom and compassion. The fifth lesson, the impersonal nature of sleep and wakefulness. In the ancient caves of Ajanta, where Buddhist monks carved elaborate meditation halls from solid rock over 1500 years ago, there exists a teaching inscription that has guided countless practitioners toward peaceful rest. Translated from Sanskrit, it reads, "Wakefulness arises and passes away. Sleep arises and passes away. The awareness that knows both waking and sleeping neither arises nor passes away. Rest in this knowing." This inscription points to one of the most liberating realizations available to anyone struggling with sleep difficulties. The understanding that your sleeplessness is not personal. It's not a reflection of your worth, your spiritual development, or your adequacy as a human being. Restlessness and peace are natural movements in the field of consciousness that arise according to causes and conditions, just like weather patterns arise in the sky according to atmospheric conditions. When you truly understand the impersonal nature of sleep and wakefulness, everything changes. The suffering that comes from taking your sleep challenges personally begins to dissolve. The shame, frustration, and self-judgment that often accompany insomnia start to loosen their grip. You begin to relate to sleeplessness the way you might relate to a thunderstorm, as a temporary condition that will naturally pass, rather than as a personal failing that defines who you are. Buddhist psychology teaches that one of the main sources of suffering comes from what they call taking things personally that are actually impersonal processes. When you lie awake at night, your mind typically creates a story about your wakefulness. I can't sleep again. There's something wrong with me. I'm terrible at sleeping. I'll never get better at this. These thoughts transform a simple experience, being awake at night, into a personal identity crisis. But what if your wakefulness is simply wakefulness? What if the racing thoughts are simply racing thoughts, arising and passing away according to the same natural laws that govern all mental phenomena? What if your restlessness is not your restlessness, but simply restlessness appearing in your field of awareness, the same way sounds appear in your field of hearing or sensations appear in your field of feeling? This shift from personal to impersonal understanding requires what Buddhism calls identification practice, learning to identify with the aware space that experiences all states rather than identifying with any particular state itself. You are not your thoughts, emotions, or physical sensations. You are the consciousness that is aware of thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations. This consciousness remains equally present whether you're experiencing peace or agitation, sleep or wakefulness. To understand this practically, consider what happens when you're listening to music. You don't become the music, you remain the listener while different sounds arise and pass away in your field of hearing. Similarly, you don't become your sleep experiences. You remain the consciousness that's aware of different states of rest and alertness as they arise and pass away in your field of awareness. This perspective transforms your relationship with insomnia completely. Instead of being someone who has insomnia, you become someone who is sometimes aware of restless states and sometimes aware of peaceful states. The restless states are no more you than the peaceful states are you. Both are temporary experiences arising in the permanent awareness that you actually are. Buddhist teaching calls this awareness your Buddha nature, the unchanging, peaceful consciousness that remains constant regardless of changing experiences. This Buddha nature is not something you need to develop or achieve. It's what you already are beneath all the layers of conditioning, thought patterns, and emotional reactions. Sleep practices help you recognize and rest in this inherent Buddha nature rather than trying to create peace from a place of identifying with agitation. One of the most profound practices for realizing the impersonal nature of consciousness is called sky-like awareness meditation. As you lie in bed, you imagine your awareness as being like the open sky, and your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations as being like clouds passing through that sky. The clouds may be dark, storm clouds of worry or light, fluffy clouds of pleasant memories, but the sky remains unaffected by whatever clouds are present. Just as the sky doesn't become stormy when storm clouds pass through it, your essential awareness doesn't become anxious when anxious thoughts pass through it. The sky provides space for all kinds of weather without being disturbed by any particular weather pattern. Similarly, your awareness provides space for all kinds of mental and emotional weather without being fundamentally disturbed by any particular pattern. This sky-like awareness practice can be particularly helpful when you're experiencing the kind of mental restlessness that often accompanies insomnia. Instead of fighting with busy thoughts or getting frustrated by mental activity, you can rest as the spacious awareness that has room for whatever mental activity is present. The thoughts continue to arise and pass away, but you're no longer caught up in their content or disturbed by their presence. The impersonal perspective also applies to understanding the causes of sleeplessness. Buddhist teaching recognizes what they call dependent origination, the understanding that all experiences arise due to multiple causes and conditions coming together rather than having single, simple causes. Your restlessness tonight might be influenced by what you ate for dinner, a stressful conversation you had 3 days ago, changes in the weather, hormonal fluctuations, something you watched on television, or countless other factors you're not even aware of. When you understand dependent origination, you stop trying to find the one cause of your sleep problems or blaming yourself for not being able to control all the variables that affect your rest. You recognize that sleep and wakefulness arise from a complex web of interconnected causes, most of which are beyond your direct control. This understanding brings tremendous relief because it frees you from the impossible task of trying to manage every factor that might affect your sleep. Instead of trying to control all causes and conditions, you learn to work skillfully with the ones that are within your influence while accepting the ones that are not. You can choose to avoid caffeine late in the day, create a comfortable sleeping environment, and practice calming techniques before bed. But you can't control whether your neighbor decides to have a loud party, whether your mind will be busy with work concerns, or whether your body will be affected by changes in barometric pressure. This understanding leads to what Buddhism calls effort without attachment, making skillful efforts to support good sleep while simultaneously accepting whatever sleep experiences arise. You do your part consciously and then trust the process, knowing that your sleep is being influenced by countless factors beyond your personal control. The impersonal perspective also transforms how you relate to sleep medications and other external aids. Instead of seeing them as personal failures or signs that you can't sleep naturally, you can understand them as skillful means for working with particular causes and conditions. Just as you might use an umbrella in the rain without feeling ashamed that you can't control the weather, you can use appropriate sleep support without feeling like you're failing at some spiritual ideal. Buddhist teaching emphasizes what they call skillful means, using whatever tools and techniques are helpful for reducing suffering and promoting well-being. If medication helps you sleep better while you're developing longer-term skills and addressing underlying causes, that can be part of a wise and compassionate approach to your sleep challenges. The key is using external aids skillfully rather than becoming dependent on them or using them to avoid dealing with deeper issues. Another aspect of understanding the impersonal nature of sleep involves recognizing what Buddhism calls universal suffering. Sleep difficulties are not unique to you. They're part of the human experience that millions of people share. Throughout history, Human beings have struggled with rest and wakefulness, with busy minds and tired bodies, with the challenge of transitioning from active engagement to peaceful surrender. When you're lying awake at 3 in the morning feeling frustrated and alone, you can remember that at this very moment, thousands of other people around the world are having similar experiences. Some are lying awake, worrying about their families. Others are struggling with physical discomfort. Others are processing difficult emotions. And others are simply experiencing the kind of restless energy that sometimes arises without any particular cause. This recognition of shared experience can be profoundly comforting. Your sleeplessness connects you to the universal human experience rather than separating you from others. You're not uniquely flawed or broken. You're simply human, dealing with one of the challenges that comes with having a human nervous system and a human mind. Buddhist loving-kindness practice specifically addresses this aspect of impersonal compassion. As you lie in bed experiencing restlessness, you can extend loving kindness to all beings who are also experiencing restlessness in this moment. You might mentally say, "May all beings who are having trouble sleeping tonight be peaceful. May all beings who are worried or anxious be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at ease." This practice accomplishes several things simultaneously. It shifts your attention away from self-focused worry and toward compassionate connection with others. It reminds you that your experience is part of a larger human tapestry rather than an isolated personal problem, and it generates the kind of warm, caring mental states that naturally support relaxation and peace. The impersonal perspective also includes understanding what Buddhism calls the observer and the observed. In every moment of experience, there's something that's being experienced, and there's the awareness that's experiencing it. Thoughts are experienced by awareness. Emotions are experienced by awareness. Physical sensations are experienced by awareness. Even sleep and wakefulness are experienced by awareness. This observing awareness is completely impersonal. It doesn't belong to you any more than the sky belongs to the clouds that pass through it. This awareness has been present throughout your entire life, witnessing all your experiences without being changed or damaged by any of them. It was present when you were a child, it's present now as an adult, and it will be present throughout whatever experiences you have in the future. When you rest your identity in this witnessing awareness rather than in your temporary experiences, you find a peace that doesn't depend on having any particular experiences. This peace is available whether you're sleeping or awake, whether you're feeling calm or agitated, whether your life circumstances are pleasant or challenging. Advanced Buddhist practice includes what they call recognizing the dreamlike nature of all experiences, including both sleeping and waking experiences. This doesn't mean that experiences aren't real or important, but rather that they're all temporary appearances arising in consciousness, like images appearing in a dream. When you understand the dreamlike nature of experience, you can engage fully with life while simultaneously maintaining a quality of lightness and non-attachment. This dreamlike understanding is particularly helpful for sleep practice because it reduces the solid, heavy quality that problems often seem to have. Your insomnia becomes like a challenging dream sequence rather than a concrete, permanent reality. This shift in perception often allows experiences to transform more easily because you're not holding them so tightly or investing them with so much solid reality. The impersonal perspective ultimately leads to what Buddhism calls equanimity, a balanced state of mind that remains stable regardless of changing circumstances. Equanimity doesn't mean becoming indifferent or not caring about your experiences. It means caring deeply while simultaneously maintaining perspective, engaging fully while remaining flexible, making efforts while accepting outcomes. When you develop equanimity towards sleep, you naturally sleep better because you're not creating the kind of mental and emotional turbulence that interferes with rest. You care about getting good sleep, and you do what you can to support it, but you don't make your well-being completely dependent on having perfect sleep every night. This equanimous relationship with sleep develops gradually through understanding and practice. Each time you remember that your restlessness is impersonal, you loosen the grip of identification with difficult states. Each time you rest in awareness rather than getting caught up in experiences, you strengthen your capacity to remain peaceful regardless of circumstances. Each time you extend compassion to yourself and others for the universal challenges of being human, you create more space for natural healing and rest to occur. The beautiful paradox of this fifth lesson is that when you stop taking your sleep problems so personally, they often begin to resolve more easily. When you're not adding the extra layer of self-judgment and personal drama to your sleep experiences, you can work with them more skillfully and patiently. The energy that was previously consumed by self-criticism becomes available for genuine healing and transformation. This understanding of the impersonal nature of consciousness naturally opens the door to the sixth lesson, which reveals one of Buddhism's most practical and immediately applicable teachings: the profound connection between what you consume throughout the day and the quality of rest you experience at night. This isn't simply about avoiding caffeine or eating light dinners, though these physical considerations matter. This is about understanding consumption in its deepest Buddhist sense. Everything you take in through all your senses and how these inputs shape the very fabric of your consciousness. The sixth lesson: mindful consumption, feeding peace, starving restlessness. In the hills surrounding the ancient city of Rajgir, where the Buddha spent many rainy seasons teaching, there stands a cave where he once gave a discourse that would fundamentally change how his followers understood the relationship between daily consumption and nighttime peace. Speaking to a group of merchants who complained of restless sleep despite their material prosperity, he said, "What you feed your mind during the day determines whether you sleep with tigers or with lambs." This teaching reveals that every moment of your waking life, you are consuming something, not just food and drink, but information, images, sounds, conversations, environments, and experiences. Each of these forms of consumption either contributes to the conditions that support peaceful sleep or feeds the mental and emotional states that create restlessness. The sixth lesson teaches you to become conscious of this constant consumption and to choose inputs that nourish peace rather than agitation. Buddhist psychology recognizes 5 categories of consumption that affect your sleep consciousness. The first is obvious: what you eat and drink. But the Buddhist understanding goes far deeper than conventional dietary advice. They teach that food carries not just nutritional properties but energetic qualities that influence your mental state. Heavy, processed foods create what they call dull energy that can make you feel physically tired but mentally sluggish rather than genuinely peaceful. Stimulating foods and drinks create scattered energy that can leave you feeling wired even when your body is exhausted. The Buddhist approach to eating for sleep involves understanding what they call the 3 qualities of food energy. Foods can be rajasic, stimulating and agitating; tamasic, heavy and dulling; or sattvic, balancing and harmonizing. Rajasic foods include caffeine, alcohol, spicy foods, and heavily processed items that create mental and physical activation. Tamasic foods include heavy meats, fried foods, and overly sweet items that create sluggishness and mental fog. Sattvic foods include fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lightly prepared meals that support both clarity and calm. But beyond the categories of food, Buddhist teaching emphasizes the quality of awareness you bring to eating itself. Mindful eating, paying full attention to the process of nourishing your body, creates a different energetic effect than distracted eating while watching television, checking your phone, or rushing through meals. When you eat mindfully, savoring flavors and appreciating the nourishment you're receiving, you're feeding not just your body, but your capacity for present moment awareness that supports peaceful sleep. The timing of eating also affects sleep consciousness in ways that go beyond simple digestion. Buddhist monastics typically eat their largest meal in the morning and avoid eating after noon, understanding that heavy eating in the evening creates not just physical heaviness but mental activity as your digestive system works through the night. While this schedule may not be practical for most modern people, the principle applies. Lighter evening eating allows your body's energy to turn toward rest and repair rather than digestion. The second category of consumption involves what you take in through your eyes. Everything you see throughout the day that gets processed by your visual consciousness. In our modern world, this includes an enormous amount of stimulating visual input: screens, advertisements, news images, violent or sexual content, and the constant visual noise of urban environments. Buddhist teaching recognizes that visual consumption continues to process in your consciousness long after you've stopped looking, creating what they call mental impressions that can surface as restless thoughts or disturbing dreams. The practice of visual fasting in the evening can dramatically improve sleep quality. This means avoiding screens for at least an hour before bed, but it goes deeper than just blue light concerns. It means choosing visual inputs in the evening that support calm and peaceful states of mind. Soft lighting, natural scenes, beautiful art, or simply closing your eyes and resting in inner vision rather than constantly feeding your visual consciousness with external stimulation. Buddhist monasteries traditionally dim their lighting as evening approaches and avoid any form of entertainment or stimulating visual activity before sleep. This creates what they call twilight consciousness, a gradual transition from the bright, active awareness needed for daytime activities to the soft, receptive awareness that supports sleep. You can create your own version of twilight consciousness by gradually reducing visual stimulation as bedtime approaches. The third category involves auditory consumption, what you listen to throughout the day and evening. Sound has a particularly powerful effect on nervous system activation because auditory processing continues even during sleep. Buddhist teaching recognizes that harsh, loud, or agitating sounds create lasting tension in your system, while gentle, harmonious sounds support relaxation and peace. This includes obvious considerations like avoiding loud or violent media in the evening, but extends to subtler auditory choices, the tone of voice you use and listen to in conversations, the emotional quality of music you choose, background sounds in your environment, and even the internal soundtrack of your own mental commentary throughout the day. Many Buddhist practitioners develop what they call sound sensitivity, becoming aware of how different auditory inputs affect their inner state and making conscious choices to surround themselves with sounds that support peace rather than agitation. This might mean choosing calming music in the evening, having difficult conversations earlier in the day rather than before bed, or creating periods of silence that allow your auditory system to rest and reset. The fourth category of consumption involves emotional and energetic input, the feelings and moods you absorb from other people, environments, and situations throughout the day. Buddhist psychology teaches that you're constantly exchanging energy with everyone and everything around you, and that sensitive people can become overwhelmed by absorbing negative emotions from others without realizing it. This energetic consumption is particularly relevant to sleep because unprocessed emotions from daily interactions often surface when your mind becomes quiet. You might lie in bed suddenly feeling anxious or sad without understanding that you're processing emotions you absorbed from a coworker's stress or a friend's worry earlier in the day. The practice of energetic hygiene becomes crucial for protecting your sleep consciousness. This includes learning to recognize when you've absorbed others' emotions rather than feeling your own, developing skills for returning borrowed feelings to their rightful owners, and creating energetic boundaries that allow you to be compassionate without becoming overwhelmed. Buddhist teaching offers specific practices for energetic cleansing before sleep. One involves mentally reviewing your day and asking, "What emotions am I carrying that don't belong to me?" Then consciously returning those feelings with loving kindness. I return this worry to my coworker with wishes for their peace. I return this sadness to my friend with hopes for their healing. The fifth category of consumption involves informational input, everything you learn, read, discuss, and mentally process throughout the day. In our information-saturated culture, many people consume far more mental input than they can properly digest, creating what Buddhism calls indigestion of the mind that manifests as racing thoughts and mental restlessness at bedtime. Buddhist monastics have traditionally limited their informational consumption to what directly supports their spiritual development, understanding that excessive information creates mental agitation regardless of whether the content is positive or negative. While you may not be able to limit your information intake as severely as a monk, you can apply the principle by becoming more conscious of what information you choose to consume and when. The practice of information fasting in the evening means avoiding news, social media, complex problem-solving, or intense learning activities before bed. Instead, you can choose inputs that support peaceful states of mind, inspirational reading, gentle poetry, calming music, or simply allowing your mind to rest without any new information input. Buddhist teaching also addresses what they call the timing of consumption, understanding that the same input can have different effects depending on when you consume it. Coffee in the morning might support alertness and productivity, while coffee in the evening creates restlessness that interferes with sleep. Similarly, intense emotional conversations or challenging intellectual material might be energizing earlier in the day but disturbing when consumed close to bedtime. The general principle is to consume stimulating inputs earlier in the day when your system can process and integrate them, while choosing calming, nourishing inputs in the evening that support the transition toward rest. This creates what Buddhist practitioners call consumption rhythm that aligns with your natural circadian cycles rather than fighting against them. Advanced Buddhist practice includes understanding what they call mental rumination as a form of consumption. When you repeatedly think about problems, replay conversations, or mentally rehearse future scenarios, you're consuming and reconsuming the same mental material, often increasing its emotional charge rather than resolving it. This mental rumination is one of the most common causes of sleeplessness because it creates ongoing mental activity that prevents the mind from settling. The practice of mental fasting involves consciously choosing not to feed certain thought patterns, especially in the evening hours. When you notice your mind beginning to ruminate about work problems or relationship concerns, you can practice what Buddhism calls starving the thought, withdrawing your attention from the thought pattern rather than feeding it with more mental energy. This doesn't mean suppressing important concerns or avoiding necessary problem solving. It means recognizing that bedtime rumination rarely leads to useful solutions and often just increases anxiety and mental agitation. You can set aside specific times for constructive thinking and problem solving while protecting your evening hours for mental rest and peace. Buddhist consumption practices also include what they call gratitude consumption, consciously choosing to focus on appreciating what you've received rather than dwelling on what you lack. This shifts your mental diet from scarcity thinking, which creates anxiety, to abundance thinking, which creates contentment. Before sleep, you can practice consuming gratitude by mentally reviewing the day's gifts, appreciating simple pleasures, and acknowledging the countless ways you've been supported and nourished. The practice of conscious consumption extends to your physical environment as well. Buddhist teaching recognizes that environments themselves can be nourishing or depleting, calming or agitating. Your bedroom, in particular, should support peaceful states of consciousness rather than stimulating activity or mental engagement. This means considering not just the practical aspects of your sleep environment, temperature, darkness, noise level, but also the energetic quality of the space. Is your bedroom cluttered with reminders of unfinished tasks? Does it contain stimulating colors or images? Is it used for activities other than sleep and rest that might create associations with alertness rather than relaxation? Creating what Buddhism calls a sanctuary space for sleep involves removing inputs that don't support rest and adding elements that do. Perhaps soft textures, calming colors, natural elements, or objects that remind you of peace and safety. The goal is to create an environment that feeds your nervous system's capacity for rest rather than stimulating ongoing activity. The beautiful integration of all these consumption practices creates what Buddhist teachers call lifestyle as spiritual practice, understanding that how you live throughout the day is inseparable from how you rest at night. Every choice about what to consume becomes an opportunity to support either agitation or peace, restlessness or tranquility. This doesn't mean becoming rigid or obsessive about every input, which would create its own form of mental agitation. Buddhist teaching emphasizes what they call the middle way, making conscious choices while maintaining flexibility, caring about your consumption without becoming attached to perfection. The practice develops gradually as you become more sensitive to how different inputs affect your inner state and sleep quality. You might notice that watching intense movies in the evening leaves you feeling wired, or that having difficult conversations after dinner affects your ability to settle into sleep. This growing sensitivity allows you to make increasingly skillful choices about what you consume and when. Over time, mindful consumption becomes a natural expression of self-care and wisdom rather than a set of rigid rules. You choose inputs that genuinely nourish your well-being because you've experienced directly how these choices affect your peace of mind and quality of rest. Your consumption becomes an expression of compassion for yourself and support for your deepest intentions to live with greater awareness and tranquility. This conscious approach to consumption creates the foundation for the seventh lesson, which unveils one of Buddhism's most transformative insights about the nature of time itself and how your relationship with time directly affects your ability to rest. This teaching goes far beyond simple time management or sleep scheduling to address something much more fundamental: how the quality of your presence in each moment determines whether time feels like an enemy that's always running out or an ally that supports your natural rhythms of activity and rest. The seventh lesson, sacred time, living in rhythm with natural cycles. Deep in the mountains of Bhutan, in a monastery that has maintained the same daily rhythm for over 800 years, there hangs an ancient bronze bell whose sound has marked the transitions between day and night for countless generations of monks. This bell doesn't just signal the time, it serves as a reminder of what the Buddha called sacred time, the understanding that true peace comes not from trying to control or maximize time, but from learning to move in harmony with time's natural rhythms. The seventh lesson reveals that much of modern insomnia stems from what Buddhist psychology calls time sickness, a fundamental disconnection from natural temporal rhythms that leaves people feeling constantly rushed during the day and unable to slow down at night. This time sickness manifests as the feeling that there's never enough time, that you're always behind schedule, that rest is something you'll get to later when everything else is finished, which of course never happens. Buddhist teaching recognizes that time has both horizontal and vertical dimensions. Horizontal time is the linear progression of hours, days, and years that dominates modern consciousness, the time of schedules, deadlines, and productivity. But vertical time is the dimension of depth and presence, where a single moment can contain infinite richness, and a few minutes of true presence can be more restorative than hours of distracted activity. When you live primarily in horizontal time, you're always mentally ahead of or behind where you actually are. You're thinking about the next task while doing the current one, or reviewing the previous activity while engaged in the present one. This creates what Buddhism calls temporal fragmentation, a scattered quality of consciousness that makes it difficult to fully engage with anything, including rest. The practice of vertical time awareness begins with recognizing when you're present and when you're mentally time traveling. As you go through your day, you can periodically ask yourself, am I here now or am I somewhere else in time? When you notice that you're mentally in the future or past, you can gently return your attention to the vertical dimension of this moment, this breath, this immediate experience. This vertical time awareness becomes particularly important in the evening hours as you prepare for sleep. Instead of treating bedtime preparation as just another horizontal task to be completed quickly so you can get to sleep, you can approach it as an opportunity to enter vertical time, moving slowly, paying attention to each step in your bedtime routine, allowing yourself to fully arrive in the present moment. Buddhist monasteries structure their days around what they call natural time, rather than artificial time. They wake with the sunrise, eat when hungry, work during the hours of greatest natural energy, rest as the sun sets, and sleep when darkness falls. While most modern people can't follow this rhythm exactly, understanding the principle allows you to align your daily schedule more closely with your natural circadian rhythms rather than fighting against them. The practice of chronobiology awareness involves paying attention to your natural energy cycles throughout the day and scheduling activities accordingly when possible. Most people have predictable patterns of mental alertness, physical energy, and natural tiredness that occur at roughly the same times each day. When you honor these patterns rather than forcing yourself to be equally alert and productive at all hours, you create less internal resistance and make it easier for your body to shift into rest mode at night. For many people, there's a natural dip in energy during mid-afternoon that our culture typically treats as something to overcome with caffeine or willpower. But Buddhist understanding recognizes this as a natural rhythm that can be honored with a brief rest or meditation, allowing energy to naturally regenerate rather than artificially stimulating the system. When you work with your natural rhythms during the day, your body trusts that rest time will be honored when evening comes. The seventh lesson introduces what Tibetan Buddhism calls transition time awareness. Recognizing that the shifts between different activities or states of consciousness require time and attention rather than happening instantaneously. In our fast-paced culture, people often try to shift from high-stress work directly into sleep without allowing for the natural transition time that the nervous system needs to change gears. Buddhist practice teaches specific rituals for honoring these transitions. Between work and personal time, you might sit quietly for 5 minutes, allowing your nervous system to shift from professional mode to personal mode. Between dinner and sleep preparation, you might take a gentle walk or practice breathing exercises, creating space for your body to process food and your mind to process the day's experiences. These transition rituals aren't just pleasant additions to your routine, they're neurologically necessary. Your nervous system needs time to shift from sympathetic activation, the state needed for work and problem solving, to parasympathetic activation, the state needed for rest and digestion. When you try to make these shifts too quickly, you create internal stress that can persist for hours. The practice of temporal boundaries becomes crucial for protecting your sleep consciousness from the demands of horizontal time. This means having specific times when you stop checking email, stop thinking about work problems, stop planning tomorrow's activities, and stop engaging with the kind of mental activity that keeps your mind in active problem-solving mode. Buddhist teaching recognizes that without clear temporal boundaries, the mind will continue working indefinitely because there's always more that could be done, planned, or worried about. Setting boundaries isn't about being rigid or unresponsive to genuine needs. It's about creating the space necessary for your nervous system to shift into rest mode. These boundaries can be flexible while still being real. You might decide that after 8 o'clock in the evening, you'll only engage with urgent matters that truly can't wait until tomorrow. Or you might establish that the hour before bed is protected time for rest-supportive activities only. The specific boundaries matter less than having some structure that protects your evening hours from the endless demands of horizontal time. Advanced Buddhist practice includes understanding what they call time offering, consciously dedicating your time to what's most meaningful rather than just responding to whatever seems most urgent. This practice transforms time from something that controls you into something you offer consciously to what you value most deeply. Before sleep, you can practice time offering by mentally dedicating the day's activities to the benefit of all beings, or by appreciating the time you had to spend with loved ones, or by acknowledging the privilege of having time for rest and renewal. This shifts your relationship with time from scarcity, there's never enough, to abundance. I'm grateful for the time I have. The seventh lesson also addresses what Buddhism calls sleep timing wisdom. Understanding that when you sleep is almost as important as how much you sleep. Buddhist physiology recognizes that sleep quality changes dramatically depending on when you go to bed relative to natural circadian rhythms. Sleep that occurs during the deepest part of the natural darkness cycle, roughly between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. in most latitudes, has different restorative properties than sleep that occurs later. This doesn't mean you must go to bed at 10 o'clock every night, but it suggests that very late bedtimes may require longer sleep duration to achieve the same level of restoration. Understanding this principle allows you to make conscious choices about sleep timing based on your individual circumstances while recognizing the natural rhythm that supports optimal rest. Buddhist monasteries also practice what they call seasonal time awareness, adjusting daily rhythms according to the changing seasons rather than maintaining exactly the same schedule year-round. In winter, when darkness comes earlier and lasts longer, they sleep more and engage in more contemplative activities. In summer, when daylight extends later, they adjust their schedule accordingly. While modern life doesn't allow for dramatic seasonal adjustments, you can honor seasonal rhythms in smaller ways. Perhaps going to bed slightly earlier during winter months, spending more time in meditation or quiet activities during the darker seasons, or allowing for more social and active engagement during the brighter months. This seasonal awareness helps you stay connected to natural time rather than living entirely within artificial schedules. The practice of present moment expansion offers perhaps the most profound approach to healing time sickness. This involves learning to experience more richness and satisfaction within each moment rather than always needing more time to feel fulfilled. When you're truly present, whether you're eating a meal, having a conversation, or lying in bed preparing for sleep, time seems to expand and deepen rather than rushing by. This present moment expansion happens naturally when you're not mentally elsewhere. A 5-minute meditation where you're completely present can feel more satisfying than an hour of distracted relaxation. A brief conversation where you're fully engaged can feel more nourishing than a long interaction where you're partially elsewhere mentally. Buddhist teaching includes specific practices for expanding present moment awareness. One involves what they call slowness meditation, consciously moving more slowly than usual while paying careful attention to each micro movement. This might mean taking twice as long to brush your teeth while noticing every sensation, or walking very slowly while feeling each footstep completely. This slowness isn't about being inefficient. It's about discovering the richness available in ordinary activities when you're fully present with them. When you regularly practice this kind of presence during daily activities, your nervous system learns to shift into deeper states of awareness, which naturally supports the transition into sleep consciousness. The 7th lesson also introduces gratitude for time practice, appreciating the gift of having time rather than focusing on having not enough time. Before sleep, you can reflect on the miraculous fact that you have time for rest, time to let your body heal and regenerate, time to experience the peace that comes with letting go of the day's activities. This gratitude for time includes appreciating your past selves who worked and struggled so that your current self can rest. You can thank your daytime self for handling responsibilities so that your nighttime self can relax. You can appreciate all the people whose work during their waking hours allows you to sleep safely. The people who keep essential services running through the night, who maintain the infrastructure that supports your security and comfort. Understanding collective time, your interconnection with the temporal rhythms of your family, community, and larger society also affects sleep quality. When your personal rhythms align reasonably well with those around you, there's less resistance and more support for natural transitions between activity and rest. When you're completely out of sync with your social environment, it requires more energy to maintain your preferred rhythms. This doesn't mean you should ignore your natural rhythms to conform to others' schedules, but rather that you can look for ways to honor both your individual needs and your connections with others. Perhaps you can negotiate with family members about quiet hours in the evening, or find a compromise between your ideal bedtime and your partner's preferences. The Buddhist understanding of time ultimately reveals that peace comes not from having more time or perfect time management, but from developing what they call temporal wisdom, knowing when to act and when to rest, when to engage and when to withdraw, when to be productive, and when to simply be present. This temporal wisdom develops naturally as you practice the other lessons: mindful living, conscious consumption, letting go, and present moment awareness. You begin to sense when your energy is naturally rising and when it's naturally falling. You become more sensitive to the subtle cues that indicate it's time to begin transitioning toward rest. Most importantly, you develop trust in natural rhythms rather than feeling like you must control and optimize every moment. You learn to work with time as a flowing river rather than trying to dam it up or force it to move faster. This creates the kind of relaxed relationship with time that naturally supports peaceful sleep and makes rest feel like a natural conclusion to each day rather than something you have to fight for or earn through perfect scheduling. This wisdom about sacred time and natural rhythms leads us naturally to the 8th lesson, which reveals one of Buddhism's most intimate teachings: the profound relationship between forgiveness and rest. This isn't simply about resolving conflicts before bedtime, though that's certainly part of it. This is about understanding how the weight of unfinished emotional business, resentments, self-judgments, guilt, and the countless small hurts we accumulate throughout our days creates a kind of psychic tension that makes deep rest impossible. The 8th lesson: the practice of evening forgiveness, releasing the day's emotional residue. In the candlelit halls of Wat Pho Temple in Bangkok, there's an evening ritual that has been practiced for over 2 centuries. As the day's final bell rings, each monk takes a few moments to mentally review the day and practice what they call heart clearing, consciously releasing any resentment, self-judgment, or emotional charge that may have accumulated during the day's interactions. This practice ensures that no monk carries the emotional residue of one day into the next, creating the inner spaciousness necessary for truly restorative sleep. The 8th lesson teaches that forgiveness is not just a moral virtue but a practical necessity for anyone seeking peaceful rest. Buddhist psychology understands that holding on to anger, resentment, guilt, or judgment creates what they call emotional toxins in your consciousness. Mental and energetic patterns that continue to agitate your system long after the original triggering event has passed. These emotional toxins don't disappear simply because you want to sleep. Instead, they often become more prominent during the quiet hours when your usual distractions are removed. You lie in bed and suddenly find yourself replaying an argument from 3 days ago, or judging yourself for a mistake you made at work, or feeling angry about something your partner said at dinner. These midnight eruptions of emotional material aren't random. They're the natural result of carrying unprocessed feelings throughout your day. Buddhist teaching distinguishes between what they call clean anger and dirty anger. Clean anger is the immediate, appropriate response to harmful situations, a natural energy that motivates you to create boundaries, address problems, or protect yourself and others. Clean anger arises, serves its purpose, and then naturally dissolves. Dirty anger, by contrast, is anger that has been held onto past its useful purpose, often mixed with story-making, self-righteousness, or the desire for revenge. Similarly, there's clean guilt that appropriately motivates you to make amends when you've made a mistake, and dirty guilt that becomes a form of self-attack that serves no constructive purpose. Clean sadness that honors loss and allows healing versus dirty sadness that wallows in victimhood or self-pity. The practice of evening forgiveness helps you release the dirty versions of emotions while honoring their clean purposes. The foundation of Buddhist forgiveness practice is understanding that forgiveness is primarily something you do for yourself, not for others. When you hold on to resentment towards someone who has hurt you, that resentment lives in your consciousness, not theirs. It affects your sleep, your peace of mind, and your overall well-being. The person you're angry with may be sleeping peacefully while you lie awake stewing about their behavior. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or avoiding necessary boundaries. Forgiveness in the Buddhist sense means releasing the internal poison of resentment so that you can respond to difficult situations from wisdom rather than reactivity. You can forgive someone while still choosing not to trust them. You can release anger while still addressing problematic behavior. You can let go of resentment while still protecting yourself from future harm. The evening forgiveness practice begins with what Buddhism calls the daily review, gently examining the day's interactions and noticing where you might be carrying emotional charge. This isn't a harsh self-examination or a detailed analysis of every interaction. It's a kind, curious review that asks, what am I still carrying from today that I'm ready to release? You might discover that you're still irritated about being cut off in traffic this morning. You might notice lingering hurt from a colleague's dismissive comment. You might find yourself carrying guilt about being impatient with your child, or resentment about having to work late, or anxiety about a conversation you need to have tomorrow. Each of these emotional holdings creates a kind of energetic weight that your system must carry, making deep rest more difficult. The practice of returning borrowed emotions is particularly important in our interconnected world, where it's easy to absorb others' feelings without realizing it. You might be carrying your spouse's work stress, your friend's relationship drama, or anxiety from news stories you encountered during the day. Buddhist practice teaches specific techniques for recognizing these borrowed emotions and consciously returning them with loving kindness. This might look like mentally saying, I return this worry about your job to you, dear spouse, with wishes for your success and peace. This anxiety belongs to you, not me, and I release it with love. Or, I return this global fear I absorbed from the news today to the collective consciousness with prayers for healing and wisdom for all beings. This practice of returning borrowed emotions isn't about becoming callous or uncaring. It's about maintaining appropriate emotional boundaries so that you can offer genuine support to others without becoming overwhelmed by taking on their feelings as your own. When you're carrying everyone else's emotions, you have less capacity for your own healing and rest. Self-forgiveness often proves more challenging than forgiving others. Buddhist teaching recognizes that most people are much harsher critics of themselves than they would ever be toward a friend facing similar challenges. The practice of befriending yourself involves extending the same compassion to your own mistakes and limitations that you would naturally offer to someone you care about. The evening self-forgiveness practice includes acknowledging ways you fell short of your own standards during the day, while simultaneously recognizing your fundamental goodness and your sincere intention to live wisely. You might say, I forgive myself for being impatient with my colleague today. I acknowledge that I was tired and stressed, and I commit to approaching similar situations with more awareness tomorrow. I am learning and growing, and I deserve compassion for my imperfections. This self-forgiveness isn't about making excuses or avoiding responsibility. It's about releasing the kind of self-attack that creates internal agitation and prevents you from learning from your mistakes. When you approach your shortcomings with kindness rather than harsh judgment, you create the emotional safety necessary for genuine growth and change. Buddhist psychology recognizes what they call the perfectionism trap, the belief that you should be able to handle every situation with perfect wisdom, patience, and skill. This perfectionism creates a kind of internal violence where you constantly judge yourself for being human. The evening forgiveness practice helps you accept your humanity while still aspiring to growth and wisdom. One particularly powerful technique involves what Tibetan Buddhism calls deity practice, adapted for forgiveness. You imagine yourself surrounded by the presence of ultimate compassion, whether you conceptualize this as the Buddha, a saint, divine love, or simply the universe's infinite capacity for forgiveness. From this perspective of unconditional love, you look at your day's mistakes and shortcomings with the same boundless compassion that accepts all beings exactly as they are. This practice helps you access what Buddhist teachers call vertical forgiveness. Forgiveness that comes from a higher perspective rather than from the horizontal level where you're still caught up in the emotional drama of who was right or wrong. From the vertical perspective, you can see that everyone involved in conflicts is suffering in some way and doing their best with their current level of understanding and emotional capacity. The practice of forgiveness meditation can be done lying in bed as part of your sleep preparation. You begin by placing your hand on your heart and connecting with your intention to release the day's emotional burdens. Then, you systematically work through different categories of forgiveness. Forgiving yourself, forgiving family members, forgiving colleagues or strangers, forgiving larger situations or systems that caused frustration. For each person or situation, you don't need to feel overwhelming love or pretend that harmful behavior was acceptable. You simply need to release your internal attachment to resentment. You might say, "I forgive you not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger hurts me more than it affects you. I release this resentment for my own peace and healing." Sometimes forgiveness comes easily, and you feel immediate relief as you let go of emotional burdens. Other times, forgiveness feels impossible, and you can only manage a willingness to eventually forgive. Both responses are valid. Buddhist teaching emphasizes that forgiveness is often a gradual process rather than a single moment of release. You can begin with the intention to forgive even when the feeling hasn't fully emerged yet. The practice of proxy forgiveness can be helpful when direct forgiveness feels too difficult. Instead of trying to forgive someone who has deeply hurt you, you can begin by forgiving someone else who did something similar but less severe. As you develop your capacity for forgiveness with easier situations, you gradually build the emotional strength to address more challenging relationships. Buddhist forgiveness practice also includes what they call systemic forgiveness, releasing resentment toward larger systems, institutions, or life circumstances that have caused frustration. You might practice forgiving the healthcare system for being impersonal, forgiving the economy for creating financial stress, or forgiving life itself for not meeting your expectations about how things should work. This systemic forgiveness doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting injustice. It means releasing the emotional charge that prevents you from responding skillfully to problematic situations. When you're not consumed by resentment towards systems, you have more energy available for constructive action and change. The evening forgiveness practice includes gratitude for lessons learned, finding appreciation for the ways that difficult experiences have contributed to your wisdom and growth. This isn't about being grateful for harmful situations themselves, but about recognizing that you've developed strength, compassion, and understanding through navigating challenges. You might reflect, "I'm grateful that my conflict with my partner today helped me recognize my tendency to become defensive. I'm thankful that my mistake at work reminded me of the importance of asking for help when I need it. I appreciate that my experience with that rude customer gave me more empathy for other people in service positions." This gratitude for lessons doesn't minimize the reality of difficulty or pain, but it helps transform challenging experiences into sources of wisdom rather than sources of ongoing resentment. When you can find meaning and growth in difficult situations, they lose some of their power to create lasting emotional disturbance. Advanced forgiveness practice includes what Buddhism calls anticipatory forgiveness, extending compassion in advance to the mistakes you'll inevitably make tomorrow and the imperfect responses you'll have to challenging situations. This creates a foundation of self-acceptance that makes it easier to handle difficulties with grace rather than harsh self-judgment. You might say, "Tomorrow I may be impatient, make mistakes, or respond unskillfully to challenging situations. In advance, I offer myself compassion for these human imperfections. I commit to learning from whatever happens while treating myself with the kindness I deserve as someone who is trying their best." The physical dimension of forgiveness involves consciously releasing tension that's stored in your body from unresolved emotional situations. Buddhist teaching recognizes that anger creates tension in the jaw and shoulders, fear contracts the chest and stomach, and guilt often manifests as overall body rigidity. As you practice emotional forgiveness, you can also invite your body to release the physical holding patterns associated with these emotions. This might involve breathing into tense areas while mentally releasing resentments, or consciously softening muscles while practicing self-forgiveness. The combination of emotional and physical release creates a more complete clearing that supports deeper rest. The evening forgiveness practice concludes with what Buddhist teachers call dedication of merit, offering the peace and healing you've created through forgiveness for the benefit of all beings. You recognize that your inner peace contributes to the overall peace in the world, and that by releasing your own emotional toxins, you're creating less suffering in the collective human consciousness. This dedication connects your personal healing to something larger than yourself, which often deepens the sense of peace and completion that comes from forgiveness practice. You're not just clearing your own emotional slate. You're contributing to the healing of the world through your commitment to releasing resentment and cultivating compassion. Over time, the evening forgiveness practice transforms from something you do to clear specific daily conflicts into a way of living that prevents the accumulation of emotional toxins in the first place. You begin to practice real-time forgiveness throughout the day, releasing small irritations and disappointments as they arise rather than collecting them until bedtime. This ongoing forgiveness practice creates what Buddhist teachers call a clear heart, an emotional state characterized by openness, warmth, and freedom from the burdens of accumulated resentments and self-judgments. When your heart is clear, your mind naturally settles into peace, and sleep comes as easily as water flowing downhill. The inner spaciousness created by regular forgiveness becomes one of your most reliable pathways to the deep, restorative rest that heals both body and soul. This practice of clearing your emotional heart each evening creates the perfect foundation for the 9th lesson, which reveals one of Buddhism's most profound teachings about the relationship between physical posture and consciousness. This lesson goes far beyond simply finding a comfortable position for sleep. It unveils the ancient understanding that how you hold your body directly influences the quality of your mind, and that there are specific physical alignments that can guide your consciousness naturally toward the deepest states of rest. The 9th lesson, the sacred geometry of rest, body positioning for spiritual sleep. In the golden statue halls of temples across Asia, the Buddha is most often depicted in one of 4 classical postures: walking, standing, sitting, and lying down. The lying posture, known as the lion's rest, shows the Buddha on his right side with his head supported by his right hand, legs slightly bent, left hand resting along his body. This isn't merely an artistic choice. It represents the optimal physical alignment for conscious rest that Buddhist practitioners have refined over millennia. The 9th lesson teaches that your sleeping position is never neutral. Every way you arrange your body sends specific signals to your nervous system, affects the flow of energy through your system, and influences the quality of consciousness that emerges as you transition from waking to sleeping. Most people collapse into bed without any awareness of how their physical positioning might be supporting or hindering their journey into rest. Buddhist physiology recognizes what they call the 5 winds, different types of life energy that flow through specific channels in your body. The positioning of your body affects how these winds flow, which in turn influences everything from your breathing patterns to your dream content. When your body is aligned in ways that support optimal energy flow, sleep comes more naturally and is more restorative. The traditional lion's posture recommended by Buddhist teaching offers several advantages for sleep consciousness. Lying on your right side allows your left nostril to be more open, which activates what yogic science calls the Ida Nadi, the energy channel associated with cooling, calming, and introspective states of consciousness. This is the opposite of the more activating energy channel that dominates during alert, active periods. The slight bend in the legs prevents the complete relaxation that might lead to snoring or sleep apnea while still allowing deep rest. The positioning of the arms, right arm supporting the head, left arm resting along the side, creates a circuit of energy flow that supports peaceful sleep without creating tension or restricting circulation. But Buddhist sleep positioning goes deeper than these practical considerations. The physical posture becomes a form of what they call body meditation, using your physical form as a tool for cultivating specific states of consciousness. When you consciously arrange your body in alignment with these ancient principles, you're participating in a practice that connects you to centuries of wisdom about the relationship between form and consciousness. The practice begins with what Buddhism calls conscious lying down, bringing the same mindful awareness to the act of getting into bed that you might bring to sitting meditation. Instead of collapsing into bed unconsciously, you can approach lying down as a sacred transition, moving slowly and deliberately, feeling each adjustment and settling into your chosen position with awareness and intention. This conscious approach to lying down includes what Buddhist teachers call body gratitude, appreciating your physical form for carrying you through another day of life. As you settle into bed, you can mentally thank your legs for walking, your arms for working, your back for supporting you, your heart for beating steadily all day. This gratitude creates a loving relationship with your body that supports deeper relaxation. The alignment of your spine during sleep affects not just physical comfort, but what Buddhist physiology calls central channel flow, the movement of life energy through your core. When your spine maintains its natural curves without being forced into rigidity or allowed to collapse completely, energy can flow smoothly, supporting both physical healing and consciousness transformation during sleep. This doesn't mean sleeping in a perfectly straight line, which would create tension. It means finding the position where your spine feels both supported and relaxed, where there's neither forcing nor collapsing. You might need to experiment with different pillows, mattress firmness, or sleeping positions to find what allows your spine to rest in its natural alignment. Buddhist practice also addresses the positioning of your arms and hands during sleep. The placement of your hands affects what they call hand consciousness, the energy centers in your palms that connect to your heart center. When your hands are positioned in ways that support energy flow rather than restricting it, you're more likely to experience peaceful, restorative sleep. The traditional recommendation is to avoid sleeping with your hands under your body where they might become numb or restrict circulation, and to avoid positions where your arms are raised above your heart level, which can create subtle activation rather than rest. The ideal position allows your arms to rest naturally along your body or with gentle support, maintaining what Buddhist teachers call effortless positioning. The Buddhist understanding of sleep positioning also includes what they call directional awareness, consciousness of which direction your head points while you sleep. Traditional teachings suggest that sleeping with your head toward the east, the direction of sunrise and new beginnings, or north, associated with stability and grounding, can support different qualities of rest and renewal. While this might seem like superstition to modern minds, there's growing scientific interest in how the Earth's magnetic field might affect sleep quality and how directional positioning might influence circadian rhythms. Whether or not you choose to consider directional positioning, the practice of bringing conscious awareness to all aspects of your sleep environment reflects the Buddhist principle of leaving nothing to chance when it comes to cultivating optimal conditions for rest. The ninth lesson includes understanding what Buddhism calls transition postures, specific positions that can help your nervous system shift from waking consciousness to sleep consciousness. These are temporary positions you might use for 5 to 15 minutes before settling into your main sleeping position, designed to help release the physical and energetic holding patterns of the day. One such transition posture involves lying on your back with your legs elevated on pillows, arms resting comfortably at your sides. This position helps blood flow back toward your heart and can create a sense of physical relief after a day of being upright. You might spend a few minutes in this position practicing breathing meditation or body scanning before moving to your preferred sleeping position. Another transition posture involves what Buddhist practice calls child's rest, lying on your side in a loosely curled position that mimics the safety and comfort of the womb. This position can be particularly helpful when you're feeling emotionally vulnerable or need extra comfort and security. The gentle curling creates what Buddhist psychology recognizes as containment, a sense of being held and protected that supports deep relaxation. Buddhist teaching also addresses what they call couples sleep positioning, how to arrange your bodies when sharing a bed with a partner in ways that support both individuals' rest without creating energetic or physical disturbance. This includes understanding that some people sleep better with physical contact while others need space, and finding arrangements that honor both partners' needs. The practice might involve periods of connection and periods of separation during the night, perhaps beginning sleep with some gentle contact that provides comfort and bonding, then moving to independent positions that allow for the deepest possible rest. Buddhist relationship teaching emphasizes that love includes wanting your partner to have optimal rest, even when that means less physical contact during sleep. The positioning of pillows becomes part of the sacred geometry of rest in Buddhist practice. Rather than just using pillows for head support, you can create what they call a nest of support that addresses your body's need for alignment and comfort. This might include a pillow between your knees when side sleeping to maintain hip alignment, a small pillow supporting your neck's natural curve, or a bolster along your back to create a sense of security and support. The Buddhist approach to pillow positioning emphasizes what they call minimal necessary support, using just enough pillows and props to create comfort and alignment without creating complexity or artificiality. The goal is to feel held and supported while maintaining as natural a position as possible. Temperature regulation through positioning becomes important for Buddhist sleep practice because body temperature affects consciousness states. The traditional practice involves what they call thermal positioning, arranging your body and coverings to maintain optimal temperature without overheating or becoming too cool during the night. This includes understanding that different parts of your body have different temperature needs. Your core might need warmth while your extremities need cooling, or vice versa. Buddhist practitioners learn to adjust their positioning and covering throughout the night in response to their body's changing thermal needs, treating these adjustments as opportunities for mindfulness rather than annoyances. The practice of dream positioning in Buddhist sleep yoga involves specific postures that are believed to influence dream content and quality. Sleeping on your right side is thought to promote peaceful, healing dreams, while sleeping on your left side might generate more active or adventurous dream content. Sleeping on your back is associated with spiritual dreams and connection to higher consciousness, while stomach sleeping is generally avoided as it can restrict breathing and create agitated dreams. Whether or not you experience these specific effects, the practice of conscious positioning reflects the Buddhist understanding that nothing about sleep is purely mechanical. Every aspect of rest offers an opportunity for awareness and intentional cultivation of beneficial states of consciousness. The 9th lesson includes what Buddhist teachers call micro-positioning awareness, paying attention to the subtle adjustments your body wants to make during the transition to sleep and honoring these micro-movements rather than forcing your body to remain perfectly still. Your body has its own wisdom about optimal positioning, and learning to listen to and trust this wisdom supports more natural, comfortable rest. This might mean allowing your legs to find their preferred angle of bending, letting your arms settle into positions that feel most natural, or making small adjustments to your pillow height based on what your neck and spine are communicating in the moment. The practice involves finding the balance between conscious intention and natural responsiveness. Buddhist practice also recognizes what they call emotional positioning, the way your physical posture reflects and influences your emotional state during sleep preparation. When you curl up tightly, you might be expressing a need for protection or comfort. When you stretch out expansively, you might be expressing openness and confidence. When you lie very straight and rigid, you might be holding tension or trying to maintain control. By becoming aware of your habitual sleep positions and what they might reflect about your emotional state, you can begin to consciously choose postures that support the emotional qualities you want to cultivate. If you tend toward anxiety, you might experiment with more open, relaxed positions. If you tend toward feeling ungrounded or scattered, you might try more contained, supported positions. The ultimate goal of Buddhist sleep positioning is what they call effortless alignment. Finding the physical arrangement that allows your body to rest completely while maintaining the subtle awareness and openness that supports spiritual development even during sleep. This alignment feels simultaneously relaxed and alert, comfortable and conscious, restful and receptive to the deeper healing that occurs during optimal sleep. This effortless alignment develops gradually as you experiment with different positions and become more sensitive to your body's responses. Over time, you may find that your preferred sleep position naturally evolves as your body learns to seek the alignment that best supports your current stage of physical and spiritual development. The practice of conscious sleep positioning becomes integrated with all the other Buddhist sleep practices: the mindful breathing, the emotional clearing, the letting go of daily concerns. Your physical posture becomes both a reflection of and support for the inner alignment that allows consciousness to settle naturally into the deepest, most restorative states of rest. The 10th lesson: the middle way of sleep, finding balance between effort and surrender. As all these practices begin to weave together into a comprehensive approach to Buddhist sleep wisdom, the 10th lesson emerges naturally from their integration, understanding what the Buddha called the middle way as it applies to your relationship with sleep itself. This final lesson reveals that the highest mastery in sleep practice comes not from perfecting techniques or controlling outcomes, but from finding the precise balance between caring for your sleep and holding that care lightly. The middle way, Buddhism's central teaching about finding balance between extremes, applies to sleep in profound ways that most people never consider. On one extreme lies sleep obsession, the anxious preoccupation with getting perfect sleep that actually creates the very tension that prevents good rest. On the other extreme lies sleep neglect, the attitude that sleep doesn't matter or that you should be able to function well regardless of how little or poorly you sleep. Buddhist sleep wisdom reveals that both extremes create suffering and prevent the natural flow of rest that occurs when you hold the middle position, caring for your sleep with wisdom while simultaneously releasing attachment to specific sleep outcomes. This middle way approach transforms sleep from something you desperately chase or carelessly ignore into something you cultivate with patient, loving attention. The middle way begins with understanding what Buddhist psychology calls right effort in relation to sleep. Right effort means making skillful actions to support good sleep, creating favorable conditions, practicing helpful techniques, maintaining good sleep hygiene, while avoiding what they call over-effort or under-effort. Over-effort creates tension and attachment that interferes with the surrender required for sleep. Under-effort leads to neglecting the basic conditions that natural sleep requires. This balance point feels different for each person and may change over time. For someone with chronic insomnia, right effort might initially involve more structured practices and careful attention to sleep conditions. For someone who sleeps easily but wants to deepen their rest quality, right effort might involve gentler practices focused on consciousness refinement rather than basic sleep mechanics. The middle way approach includes what Buddhist teaching calls non-demanding expectation, holding clear intentions for good sleep while remaining open to whatever sleep experience actually arises. This paradoxical stance allows you to care deeply about your rest without creating the kind of desperate attachment that often backfires and creates more sleep difficulties. You might set an intention like, "I commit to creating optimal conditions for restful sleep tonight, and I accept whatever sleep comes with gratitude and trust." This intention includes both effort, creating optimal conditions, and surrender, accepting whatever comes, embodying the middle way balance that supports natural rest. Buddhist psychology recognizes that sleep exists within what they call the realm of natural functions, bodily processes like breathing, digestion, and circulation that happen best when they're supported but not controlled. Just as you can't force your heart to beat or your food to digest, you can't force sleep to happen. But you can create conditions that allow these natural functions to occur optimally. This understanding helps resolve the fundamental paradox of insomnia. You need sleep, but trying to make sleep happen prevents it from occurring naturally. The middle way solution involves shifting from trying to make sleep happen to creating space for sleep to emerge naturally when the conditions are right. The practice of sleep equanimity becomes central to middle way sleep practice. Equanimity doesn't mean not caring about your sleep. It means maintaining inner stability regardless of whether you have a great sleep night, a difficult sleep night, or something in between. You continue to practice good sleep habits and use helpful techniques, but your emotional well-being doesn't rise and fall based on your sleep performance. This equanimity develops through what Buddhist teaching calls identity shifting, learning to identify less with being someone who struggles with sleep or someone who's a great sleeper, and more with being someone who approaches sleep with wisdom and compassion. Your sleep experiences become temporary weather patterns in the sky of your awareness, rather than fundamental truths about who you are. The middle way also applies to how you work with the various Buddhist sleep techniques you've learned. Rather than trying to practice all 14 lessons perfectly every night, which would create overwhelming complexity, you learn to choose which practices are most relevant for your current situation and inner state. Some nights you might need more focus on forgiveness and emotional clearing. Other nights, physical positioning and breathing practices might be most helpful. This intuitive selection of practices reflects what Buddhism calls skillful means, using whatever tools are most appropriate for your current circumstances rather than rigidly following the same routine regardless of changing needs. Over time, you develop what might be called sleep wisdom, the ability to sense what your system needs for optimal rest and to respond appropriately. Buddhist middle way practice includes understanding the rhythm of effort and effortlessness throughout your sleep preparation routine. There are times when some effort is appropriate, consciously creating good conditions, practicing breathing techniques, or working with emotional clearing. And there are times when effortlessness becomes more important, letting go of trying to control outcomes, surrendering to whatever experience is arising, trusting your body's natural wisdom, learning to sense when to apply effort and when to release into effortlessness becomes one of the most sophisticated aspects of Buddhist sleep practice. This sensitivity develops gradually through experience and attention, becoming an intuitive knowing that guides you naturally toward the most supportive approach for each unique sleep situation. The middle way understanding also extends to how you relate to sleep difficulties when they arise. Rather than seeing insomnia as either a terrible problem that must be solved immediately, overreaction, or as something you should just ignore and push through, underreaction, the middle way approach treats sleep challenges as opportunities for practicing wisdom and compassion. When you can't sleep, instead of becoming anxious or frustrated, you can use the wakefulness as an opportunity for gentle practices, breathing meditation, loving kindness, or simply resting in awareness. This transforms sleepless time from wasted, frustrating hours into potentially peaceful, meditative periods that serve their own purpose in your spiritual development. This doesn't mean preferring to be awake over sleeping, but rather finding ways to make wakeful periods beneficial and peaceful rather than adding suffering through resistance and frustration. Sometimes these wakeful periods lead naturally to sleep. Sometimes they don't. In both cases, you've used the time wisely and avoided creating additional mental and emotional agitation. The Buddhist middle way includes what they call seasonal wisdom about sleep, understanding that your sleep needs and patterns naturally change over time and adjusting your approach accordingly. During periods of high stress, illness, or life transitions, you might need more sleep and more structured sleep practices. During periods of stability and good health, your sleep might require less attention and maintenance. This seasonal approach prevents the kind of rigid thinking that expects your sleep to remain exactly the same regardless of changing life circumstances. It also helps you respond appropriately to natural variations in sleep needs rather than judging yourself when your sleep requirements change. Advanced middle way practice involves what Buddhist teaching calls sleep as spiritual practice. Understanding that how you approach sleep reflects and develops the same wisdom qualities you cultivate in meditation and daily life. The patience you bring to lying awake when sleep doesn't come immediately develops the patience you need for other life challenges. The non-attachment you practice toward sleep outcomes strengthens your ability to let go in other areas where control is impossible. The compassion you extend to yourself when you don't sleep perfectly teaches you to be kind to yourself when you make other mistakes. The trust you develop in your body's wisdom during sleep preparation increases your overall confidence in natural processes and inner guidance. Sleep becomes a laboratory for practicing the attitudes and perspectives that serve you throughout life. The middle way approach recognizes that perfect sleep is not the ultimate goal of Buddhist sleep practice. The goal is developing wisdom, compassion, and equanimity in relationship to sleep, which naturally tends to improve sleep quality while also providing benefits that extend far beyond rest. When you approach sleep as spiritual practice, even difficult sleep nights can contribute to your overall growth and development. This perspective transforms the entire meaning of sleep in your life. Instead of being just a biological necessity or a temporary escape from consciousness, sleep becomes an opportunity for practicing surrender, trust, compassion, and presence. Whether you sleep deeply or lightly, peacefully or restlessly, you're engaging in meaningful practice that develops qualities of wisdom and peace. The middle way ultimately teaches that the deepest sleep wisdom comes not from mastering techniques, but from developing the kind of inner balance that naturally supports rest while remaining unattached to specific outcomes. This balance allows you to care for your sleep appropriately without becoming obsessed or anxious about it, creating the optimal conditions for natural sleep to emerge. As you integrate these 14 Buddhist sleep lessons into your daily life, remember that they work together as a comprehensive approach to transforming your relationship with rest. Each lesson supports and enhances the others, creating a synergistic effect that goes beyond what any single practice could accomplish alone. The path to perfect sleep is not about perfecting your sleep, but about perfecting your relationship to whatever sleep experience arises. When you approach sleep with the wisdom, compassion, and equanimity that these ancient teachings cultivate, you discover that peace is always available. Whether you're sleeping deeply or lying awake in the quiet hours before dawn, these lessons offer not just better sleep, but a better way of living, where rest becomes sacred, wakefulness becomes conscious, and the daily rhythm of activity and rest becomes a practice that connects you to the deepest wisdom traditions humanity has ever developed. In learning to sleep like a Buddha, you learn to live like a Buddha, with presence, wisdom, and unshakable inner peace that no external circumstance can disturb. The monastery bell rings softly in the distance, marking another transition from day to night, as countless practitioners around the world settle into their beds with gratitude for the gift of rest, trust in the wisdom of their bodies, and confidence in the ancient path that leads not just to better sleep but to complete awakening in every moment of life.